So I'm Adam Nanaa, and you're in my attic in Germantown, Tennessee.
Cool. So, Adam,
Let's get formal.
could you kind of paint the picture of your upbringing?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna put my glasses on.
Sure.
My eyes are gonna go in and out of focus. Yeah. So when I was born in Miami, but my mom took us real young to New York very briefly, where she's from, upstate New York, and then we spent my first years of life in Santa Barbara, California, with my mom, not my dad, just me, my brother, and my mom, and till we were about 6, and then we moved back, to Miami, where I was born, right? So we ended up at the guy who raised me, who I'll just call Dad, right? Herbie, right? Herbie. Hi, Herbie. And I was raised there from 6 to 17 and a half-ish until I dropped out of high school and drove myself to California. Okay, so there's that. Now, didn't grow up with a lot of money, didn't grow up in a very good part of town. Safe enough, it doesn't matter when you're a kid, you don't care where you're at, right? You know what I mean? But it was not as run down, I'm sure as some people grew up, but not a lot of money, not a lot of this and that. So a lot of room open for mischief. Me and my brother, very much a team our entire lives. And, we'd get into some trouble. So we got in a lot of fights. The schools that I had to attend were rough. And it was, dog eat dog and fight or be fought, or however you say that. Like, throw some punches or receive them, your choice, So not something that I wanted to do or whatever, but, me and my brother had to do that growing up too. So, there was a lot of being on edge. Let's just say that. And, a lot of no deep introspection as a small kid, but I think some of the seeds were laid very early in me and my brother's life. Like, this is not going to be it. Like, this is not going to be life. Like, it's not going to be fighting all the fucking time and getting a job being a garbage man in Miami. Like, that's not going to happen, right?
More. Yeah.
So I think we were fishing all the time. And, my mom was great. She bought me a drum set and my brother a guitar when we were 6 and 7 years old. And not like anybody else, I think we lit the drum set on fire 6 months later. And, the guitar, we probably gave it to somebody. I don't remember, but, it was there for a minute. And, that was a nice Christmas present. And we went out on the lawn and pretended to be a band for an hour. And we're like, yeah, rock and roll, So, but, like a good, Zen moments in life, like MTV popped up, you know what I mean? And I'm obviously old enough to have been there from day one, right? And Miami was a cable district, so we got to see things, test them out. So I saw MTV from the minute one. I remember sitting there, me and my brother looking at the watch, like, it's on in 5, 4, 3, and there it was, right? And, when you start seeing what everybody looks like you have these pictures in your head, right? When you're listening to the radio, like, what gods these must be. And, like, when you see, like, Blue Oyster Cult, you're just like, what? Like, Hall & Oates, like, huh? Like, okay. And so, like I'm saying this for a reason. I think that was, like, a turn in the road. Like, maybe I can get out this way. Maybe I can be successful this way or get the girls this way, right? You know what I mean? I can play a guitar. I had one for like 6 weeks, right? That's not that hard. These guys don't look that talented. They're very ugly, Some of them can sing, some of them can't, and maybe I can get Joan Jett on the side if I want, right? So it's a lot of magical thinking too. But, so me and my brother would, and this all just kind of lays a nice little road because this was around when I was 10 or 11. And, that's what we did. It was like, went to school, came back, and did hood rat shit, and then watched MTV as much as humanly possible. My mom was working nights mostly, so me and my brother were feral and unhinged, so we could stay up all night and watch MTV if we wanted to. It's up to us. But that laid a lot of really, like, even the idea, I think there's even a DIY in there, like, these aren't rich kids, these aren't Nepo babies. This is like, like I said, I hate to keep bringing up Blue Oyster Cult. I'm not a big fan, but, like, these are some ugly guys that fell off a truck somewhere with some guitars in their hands, and now they're millionaires. You know what I mean? So like, there's just this like, that's gonna be the answer. Like, fuck being a school teacher or some other bullshit. Like, this is what we're gonna do, you know? And like a year later, just so it all ties in, and we didn't have any instruments, by the way, from the time we were 6 until a long time later, tennis racketing through the MTV years. But I will tell you this, the very first time both me and my brother got behind a real drum set or whatever, we could do it from MTV. We could do it from watching Phil Collins and people doing, you know, so we're just like, okay, the feet go here and let's go. You know? And I think even with the guitar, I had already been predisposed enough to do it. You know what I mean? You know, I think my brother too. Like, again, no formal training, no anything for me or him, right? So we're all by ear. We're all by whatever. And that includes the piano, the saxophone, the drums, the guitars, everything we've ever played. I'm not quite sure I even understand these, to be honest with you. Like, I know if you put your finger there, it makes a noise. That's about all I know. So yeah, we got into 12, and you got to, again, understand what era we're talking about. So this would be like 84, 85. So the world is like Van Halen and also a lot of new wave. And this is from MTV. You got to understand. It's already opened up the gate, like, no more Rolling Stones, even though the Rolling Stones are on MTV. It's like, no more of that. We're talking about the Pretenders now. We're talking about the Go-Go's and Blondie and all this shit. And I'm out there buying records at Kmart. You know, my very first record was...
Kmart had records?
It did. Nice vinyl section, actually. Very cheap, very cheap.
You know?
I think my mom got us a turntable when we were 6, and I got AC/DC for those about to rock, and my brother got something better than that, actually. He might have got the Go-Go's, I don't remember. But I think I bought Joan Jett right after, Pat Benatar. Quite a lot of the ladies were rocking back then. And so we were teetering at such a young age on burgeoning new wave. You know? Like, I feel like I was like ground floor new wave sometimes. And then MTV might as well have been a new wave station. I mean, it was just a lot of it.
A platform to
yes,
new
absolutely,
sounds.
right? So you're sitting there learning to love Chrissy Hines and the Pretenders, right? And you're learning to love Katrina and the Waves and Missing Persons and all of these great things, the Cars and the Tubes. So early MTV is a gateway drug for all that, right? And, you know, when we found skateboarding, and I'll be very detailed about that part, you know, to me, right at that time, that was just like, that makes sense. This is what you do when you listen to that music, you know what I mean? And then you go, as we did, we found the old thrashers, and you realize that Dwayne Peters is kind of a punk rocker, and, you know, Dave the Raver is Mr. New Wave and all this stuff. So you're like, oh, we're right on track. This is right where we should have been, right? So, you know, we had toyed like everybody else with, and you guys let me know if I'm skipping around or doing whatever.
This is
No,
perfect.
that's great.
Yeah.
And, you know, where you have the little plastic boards back then and you sit on your butt and roll down the driveway and you're like, oh, this is fun, right? So, I don't know if you saw it down there, but the Billy Ruff Chalice deck was the skull hand with the bubbles coming out in Billy Ruff. Me and my brother were playing Little League, and there was a kid. My brother's going to hate me for saying this probably, but he played on a team with him. But his name, in case he's watching, it was Berkey, Kevin Berkemeyer. I know this kid, right? So Berkey rode that Billy Ruff Chalice, and I never seen a kid skate a real deck before in my life, ever, right? You know, maybe a Devo video. I'm like, well, that looks, whatever that is, right? You know, but Berkey was like our age, but Berkey had some long hair, he wore sunglasses, and he rode that fucking skateboard. So I'm just like fucking, I'm blowing it, man. You know, like, I want to be that fucking cool. Like, you know, so I think we went down to the magazine store and bought a Thrasher, pretty sure, like 84, early 84. You know, found out about a great place called Island Water Sports, which is a huge chain in Florida, maybe still there, I'm not even sure. Went down there as me and my brother, like noobs, you know, walked into the store, looking at the wall, like, what the fuck, you know, beautiful, you know, every deck from 84, 85 is there. So you got all these wonderful decks that everything you can imagine is there, right? So the Roscop one is there, Neil Blender, and all this shit to blow your fucking mind. Some of those decks on that wall are there. And if you've never seen them before,
You've got a Neil Blender.
I do.
Next to the rough.
Yeah, I have those. And if you've never seen shit like that before, and maybe you had an idea and you see it, it's mind blown, man, period. End of story. Like, that's it. The hook is right there. That's it. I'm walking out of that store with like a sticker in my hand, because it's all probably all I can afford, you know, going, all right, I need $50 for the deck, I need 20 for the wheel. You know, I'm already making plans, right? Christmas is coming up, you know. And that was probably right before the summer in '85, maybe. And so me and my brother could only afford one deck, right? So
Share it.
yes, goes without saying. Hang on. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what happened before that, though. You could go down to Lionel Playworld, and for $20 you could get a Nash. Okay, Nash is a big thing if you were back there. Okay, everybody had a Nash. Everybody did. Navarrete redid the dragon on the skulls. That's a Nash graphic. Like everybody had that. I think it was called the Exterminator. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean I think that's what it was called. So you had a Nash board, and that wasn't going to do it. But that wasn't an inferior thing. It was just, and it was probably made in the USA. It was probably just somebody's. I think it was actually Alan Losi and Veriflex's offshoot, or I might be wrong there too, because you used to be able to get Veriflex for the same price, right? So if you went skating around 84, 85, and anybody had a skateboard, it was usually a Nash or a Veriflex. That's laying some groundwork, okay? Yeah, you guys are way too young for that, but you'll have to believe me, okay? You could not have grown up and started around that time and not have owned a Veriflex or a Nash. You had to plow through one, right? So we had that, and then we bought a Sims Lester, right? Lester Cosside, great, amazing fucking skater, splat graphic, totally 85, right? So we're like, we're in love, right? Got the green Sims, green and black Sims snake wheels, perfect, right? Roll them, amazing. Tail skid, nose rails, full 9 yards, weighed like 50 pounds, right? Just incredible to pick up and drop it, right? You know, but it was all terrain. Like it could go over, you know, broken glass if it wanted to, right? Those wheels were like, you know, big. And we had a parking lot across the street from my house that was laid very poorly. So it had a lot of bumps to it. A lot of, you know, not a skate park and by any means, but it had curbs, it had all kinds of things, right? So that was our skate park. It had things to do, right? So, and it goes without saying, by the way, throughout ages 6 through 12 and beyond, we were also doing BMX like everybody else, okay? So we had a $100 BMX bike, everybody did, you know? So we were jumping 5 tires high, we're jumping over cars, all kinds of shit. That's a whole other story, but, so we were pretty reckless before the skateboard, right? That's what I was getting at. So when we do reckless shit on the skateboard, it was not new to us to be reckless. It was like, what are we going to do at 10 o'clock at night? Yeah, let's go, you know, break into this building and go skate it, you know, whatever. I don't fucking know. So it was a lot of fun. We knew that. And we didn't have any, I always had my brother. This is part of the collusion thing is I didn't do this alone, never. It was me and my brother the entire time. So I never skated alone. That's got to be understood. Okay, I respect Rodney Mullen and all those guys that skated in 9 hours alone, but I get it's an individual sport, but it's much funner when you do it with other people. Okay, so we lucked into, again, because everybody had that Nash board and that Veriflex of kind of influencing people, our friends, and I can use them by name, but you know, like my good friend Jason and Scott and these kids, they, you know, they hung with us for a brief moment in time, but they weren't in it for life. I mean, they were just doing it because it was fun. So we would pal around, and everybody lived a couple miles, so you'd have to skate a couple miles to get to with anybody, and you know, that was fun too, right? Skating with my brother 3-4 miles just to go buy a sticker or go hang out with one person, right? Ridiculous concept. But
I want to ask a question. What function do you think like this served? So like you have your friends who weren't in it for life, you know, so in retrospect, what function do you think this was serving that maybe differed from other people? Good question.
Yeah. You know, you don't want to romanticize or unromanticize anything, right? So I'm sure places are still like this, but I mean, there was like a good part of town and a bad part of town, so to speak, in a weird way. And it's not like we lived in the worst thing that ever existed, but we weren't from the good part of town. So the people that we ended up palling around with were, you know, all looking for something, I would assume, like something to do, right? And like I said, some of these people are, you know, a couple of them have passed away, a couple of them ended up in jail, you know, you know, you do hood rat shit, you get caught up in it eventually, you know. That's a good question. You guys know it. I mean, skateboarding can get its hooks in you for life, just like music can in a weird way, right? I think skateboarding, more importantly, in my worldview, I see it as more important in a strange way. I do. I didn't have as much success with it as, well, I don't know if I have success with music, but, you know, I won't go down as, hey, that guy rode for whoever and he did moonshine. I don't know about that, but that's a good question. Me and my brother were never trying to convince anybody, ever. You know, hey, you should do this. It was like, hey, we're doing it, and if you're doing it, we're doing it together. I'll skate 3 miles to your house and blah, blah. And this is a cool thing about this. We found a good friend of ours, Tim, right? Tim Price. Hi, Tim. And, you know, he lived, miles from us. And as much as humanly possible, and certainly every day in the summer, we would skate to Tim's house, me and my brother. That's a 3-4 mile skate, and got to go back when you're done skating. And we go hang out with Tim. We go skate the church parking lot, go skate whatever. Sometimes we go to Island Water Sports. That's a whole other 2-3 miles from Tim's house. So we're talking about 20 miles, maybe a day, who the fuck knows, to buy a sticker, to go look at that John Lucero board and go, Christmas, like you're going to be mine, And, not being fantastical about it, but we're reading Thrasher and we're seeing pros and the concept of a pro and the concept of a sponsored amateur. And, we're just riding around at this point. And so we're like, we got to build a ramp. This is where it's at. Like we're not going to get it anywhere just pushing down the road and having fun. Like, we're still going to have fun, but we need to do it. So this is what I was joking with you guys about is, you could get the Thrasher ramp plans, I think, for free. I don't remember, or $1, maybe $1. I don't remember. But if you subscribe to Thrasher, they gave them to you. So we subscribed and we got them. And, it's exactly what you think it was. It was a sheet of paper, right? With how to put a nail in the ground and make a radius, right? And how to put your 2x4s in. And me and my brother were like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. This goes into the long journey of criminality and skateboarding together. But we didn't have no money, right? So we're like, you need wood. So in my neighborhood, or a little further out, they used to build a lot. They were building houses or they were building whatever they were building, right? And so there were a lot of little construction sites going on at once. And Thrasher said you need
lumber,
6 pieces of 4x8s and this many 2x4s. And so every night, my mom's gonna love it. I think I've admitted this to her, but we'd go like bandits. And this gets worse. Not worse, it gets funnier as we get older. But we would go in the middle of the night and with a shopping cart, maybe, right? And we would go hit these sites and we would take their saw and we would take their hammers and their nails and their screws and their screw gun. And my mom never questioned where we got all these power tools from. I would question my daughter if she had power tools. I was like, where the fuck did you get that? But my mom didn't care, And then we'd take some 2x4s and we'd bubble. And so 10 o'clock at night, 13 years old, pushing a shopping cart full of stolen shit from a construction site down the street, 2 miles back to my house. Nobody ever pulled me over. Nobody said a fucking word, right? You'd think, you saw that nowadays, what would you do? Even I'd be like, what the fuck? I call the cops on you, man, But we built the ramp, right? So we built a, I don't know what it was. I want to say 8x8, so 8 feet high and 8 feet wide, like horrible. Just impossible to ride.
Sounds gnarly.
Yeah, it was fucking gnarly. You did not want to slam on that ramp. It was pretty gruesome, but it had platforms, coping, everything. Right? It was a real ramp, right? And me and my brother were not what you would call proud of it, but I wasn't embarrassed by it. I made it, and I made it to ride. So we had that for about a year. And my brother has told me a story, and I don't remember it, but that ramp started out taller than 8, and we chopped it down to 8, and then we chopped it down again. I don't remember any of that. I just remember being 8 and horrible, and maybe we made it 6 for like a month. I don't remember, but I was like, we got to build a real ramp. Because again, we're reading at this time now, and I'm skipping over a lot, but I'm getting to the next ramp. So, and I'll go backwards after that. But the next ramp that we attempted to make, which we succeeded in, but it took a long time, is we made a 10 by 20. So we made a real ramp, okay? And we knew that we had the templates, but you needed more to do that. So it was more than 8 feet. So we had to go 20 feet. That's what we decided on. And that was a pain in the ass. And obviously that was more wood. Obviously. So we came across what I thought to be possibly was like a 10-story some kind of building being made. So the steel structure was kind of already there. It was skeleton, gigantic. Yeah. In this yard, funny side story, was a big giant scrapyard looking thing where they kept all the boats and stuff that they blew up in Miami Vice. The show Miami Vice. So they'd blow them up on a Friday and they'd park them there on a Saturday. So sometimes we'd play around in those. I'd never watched the show, but I was like, I figured it out a little bit after that. I was like, yeah, that's from the show. This is where they're hiding it. That's great. Maybe we should take a picture, So they're building this really big, tall business building of some kind. I don't know. So there was so much shit there. Everything we needed was there. And the question was how to get it. This one had about a 10-foot fence around it. Okay, so you had to go over the 10-foot fence get in there, scrounge around for what you need, throw it over a 10-foot fence, and then climb out and blah, blah, hoping to God that not a security guard or a cop would drive by or anything, right? Because again, you're naked out there. You've got wood on the ground on the outside of a fence while you're collecting it. Meanwhile, you're inside, right? And this is the funnier parts. We would dress in all black, like paint our faces. I mean, we were
burglars.
It was nuts, man. You know, and we got better power saws, we got better tools, and you know, we probably smuggled for a few months because we couldn't only take so much, and we didn't want to have so much going down the street. And this was with a little crew of me, my brother, and about 3 or 4 other people. So it was nice. You know, we had friends, and we were all building this ramp together. My friend Danny was instrumental early on, so it was basically me, my brother, and Danny had started it. We met a few other people, and we kind of finished it all together. And it was a work of art. It was complex, and it was an engineering marvel, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure it was.
It was amazing. However, it was fucked up. It was janky in a weird way, right? It was all wood, right? It's a plywood half pipe. It's nothing fancy. Had kinks. The ground was uneven. There's nothing I can do about that. So it looked a little warped, but we could ride it. And I was super proud of it. And so we had a real ramp. And that's when me and my brother started to get better. You know, we started to do things that we saw in the magazine. I don't want to say we were any good. It's hard to say. I mean, I thought we were okay. We got a touch of sponsorship in a weird way. It's a longer story. And they liked that we were twins. And that's where Art and Steve had come from. So the guy was, you know, for all I know, coked out of his mind going, I'm going to have a team of twins, you know. So,
That's big.
right, yeah. This is what skateboarding is going to look like. It's all twins, you know. So, you know, we were very stoked on it. And that's when we were like getting to be 15 and 16. And again, I did skip a little bit of stuff, but we were constantly, before that point, going to other people's ramps at times. So driving around when we got old enough to have a car. So that's right around that time. Bumming rides. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of street skating, you know, not in the fashion that anybody thinks it is now, but just like we don't have a ramp or
using the environment.
Yeah. We're going to the parking lot and going to have fun, or we're going to go do, you know, like those parking lots, we would do like downhill runs in those parking garages, you know, and you're going like 100 miles an hour. It's incredible. Like I would never do that now. That's frightening as fuck to even think about that, but we would do that all the time. And people would wipe out and lose their teeth and you'd be like, oh shit, you know, like maybe this is dangerous. I don't know. And we would freestyle. To ask your question later, you know, freestyle always came at like the sun's going down, like let me try a couple of primos or something like that. So, but we would still kind of do it. And you know, just having mad respect through the thrasher and trans world of like what a Chris Miller is, Tony Hawk, who he is, you know, who you love the most. Like I love these outside freaks, man, you know, because of MTV. Like, you know, I like, you know, I guess hand in hand with it too, again, I'll go backwards a little bit, is, you know, we got into punk rock right around the same fucking time. So, you know,
to interject quickly, like the ethos of DIY is pretty tangible in what you've just described.
Absolutely.
Right? Like realizing.
It's worse.
But also in turn gets better with a lot of,
absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. It's in your bones.
It's really palpable that experience building that ramp, taught you some sense of liberation.
And we had ramps.
Right.
So there was ramps in North Miami, where I lived. There was ramps in Lauderdale. All of Florida, southern Florida, was very populated with ramps.
Sure.
Yes. Me and my brother have always been lone wolves in a weird way. Like, we want to be accepted. I know this. I've talked to my brother all my life. You know, I don't want to do things that only I will, you know, cherish or do or whatever. Like, there's a part of me and a part of my brother where we need to show off, to be honest with you, you know. Again, probably from that early MTV. But, yeah.
But it's interesting.
Yeah.
You have MTV really taking away the deification of the rock star and making it seem more accessible. And then you have skateboarding teaching you DIY, and that pretty much everything is achievable if you're willing to cross certain boundaries.
Yes.
So all of this culminates to a kind of exciting part of your comeuppance.
I just had this conversation with another person, and I just this morning talked to my brother about something very, very similar to that. Is absolutely, and you know, to me, all of the things that I've done, whether it be a record label, whether it be a band, whether it be a skateboard company, whether it be anything, is just, I just don't see people doing it the way that I want it done enough for me to say, I want to join your party, you know?
You're going to make your own.
Yeah, I'm going to do it myself, you know what I mean? And I feel that way mostly again, we'll just skip around, but I feel that way about music is, and I really would love to give a TED talk on it, to be honest with you, is if your band's any good, why would you allow somebody else to make money off that? If you're going to be good, you're good. Make your own fucking money. Make your own career. Make your own fucking whole choices. Everything down the road should be yours to make because you're that fucking good. And if you go the wrong way with that, like some of my friends did, some of the people that I knew did, you got raped. No other word for it, you know? And I didn't want to be raped by anybody. And again, part of me is just like, like, I'll show you how to fucking do a record label. Yeah, you haven't seen me yet, you know? I'll show you how to fucking skate. You haven't seen me yet, you know? You won't make me a fucking vert board. I'll make myself a fucking vert board. You know, I've been accused of that. I think that's where all my ideas come from, is just maybe a bad ego. I don't know. Maybe like, hey, fuck you, I can do that, you know? And sometimes it's cheaper. You know, sometimes it's easier work to start your own record label than it is to sit down and beg some fucking people to be on their shit. Because,
I agree, and I would argue it's more satisfying to do
I think so.
I would agree with that.
I don't think that in the moments when I was doing that, like, I don't think that my record labels, I did 2, I'm on my 3rd. Like, I remember people asking me in interviews, which I did very little interviews, always very little interviews. Sometimes they'd ask me, why do you do this? Why are you making music? And the answer was always, I have no fucking clue. Like, I really don't. I don't know. And what you said about skateboarding, like, when something gets its hooks in me, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, these synthesizers aren't cheap. You know, like, but it's in me. It's got its hooks in me. That's a really good question about that, all that stuff. But yeah, that DIY thing, it's like, I felt like I was never in society at some point. Like, I was never going to fit in. And that's why we're making fun with MTV is like, it's showing me, like, I don't have to fit in, right? I don't. Like, if I don't want to, I don't want to. And I knew I wasn't gonna, you know, whatever that is, you know, whatever my problems are in life, you know. But I have my brother there with me saying, yeah, we're okay. Like, we can be the first and only punk rock kids in Miami. It's okay, you know. Like, we'll survive, you know.
There's probably, I can speak for Tommy and myself, and I think that I'd argue you maybe didn't want to fit in too, to an extent.
Yes.
And so I want to talk musically here.
We're gonna jump all around.
I know it's gonna be scrambled.
It's okay.
No, that's fine with me. You have New Wave coming out.
Yep.
What would you call that?
I'm in a new wave band, by the way, just so you guys know. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll play you a tune later.
Sure,
okay, just so
do.
you can hear.
I want to strum on one of those fucking Gibsons
Feel
at
free.
some point.
Yeah.
Feel free.
But would you consider MTV your really initial exposure to like obscure sounding music? Because just from what I've heard that you've created, I can't imagine it being I guess I could imagine it being a product of that initial MTV broadcast.
It bled into each other. Look, so we're getting right back to being 12 and 13 again.
Yeah.
Because
you have Jabberjaw might have been later than.
Oh yeah, no. That's 18, 19 years old. That's
Okay.
California.
Gotcha.
Yeah, me and my brother tinkered briefly with a pawn shop guitar.
Okay.
That's as close as we got to being a band before I moved to California. So we would go to a practice studio, and they had a drum set that you could rent the room for like $25 for an hour, and we'd go down there and play Misfits covers. You know, whatever. I didn't know how to play the guitar, to be honest with you. So, and my brother did not know how to play the drums. So whatever we did had to be super simple and, you know, whatever.
Feasible.
Yes, absolutely. So no, when we're 12 and 13 though, and we're getting into skateboarding, obviously Thrasher's got a music
Absolutely.
right
tie-in.
in there, right? So they're talking to you about this band and this band and this band. So I don't remember who it was, but somebody handed me God, I wish I could remember this person, because I know they gave me 2 cassettes. Yeah, we didn't hang around with older kids back then, to be honest with you, either. I know people had mentors. Me and my brother kind of had to make it all up. But it had Minor Threat, 7 Seconds, and I think maybe the Descendants were on the B-side, maybe Black Sabbath, something like that. You know, my mom loves the 80s. My mom's she's a hippie. So growing up in the car, when I'm 6 or 7 years old, we're listening to the Doors and shit. My mom likes some dark shit. So, you know, Bad Brains was on the B-side, and a little Descendants, I think so. You know, you get what you get with music, and then you hear that, and you're just like, what the fuck is that? You know, as fast as the Bad Brains were, I didn't think was possible. That's how blown away I was. Like when Minor Threat was fast, and I was like, oh, in 7 seconds, fast. And then you flip that fucking thing and you don't know what is going on with the Bad Brains. Like, it's just amazing, right? So the hook is there right there as well, okay? And that was, to me, at the time, why punk rock was so fucking rad, was the speed. So nobody on MTV was playing half that fast. And here, all of a sudden, you've got Minor Threat and the Bad Brains and the Descendants and people who are lightning fast. And, you know, I didn't imagine, that almost could have possibly briefly squelched the idea that I could play music, because I was like, there's no fucking
chance.
way. Like, yeah, you can't even air drum the Bad Brains like that fast if you wanted to. Yeah. So we were getting into that. Now, my life gets a little stranger than my brother's as far as music goes. So my brother is almost at that point, probably his whole life, is take it or leave it with punk rock, which means he'll gladly listen to it with me, no problem. But he didn't want to buy a 7 seconds record, whatever I did. I wanted to own everything, you know. And then brief little things popped into my life that I don't think popped into his, right? So, you know, this is the 80s. So we're both listening to Motley Crue and Skid Row and all that. That has to happen. You don't have a choice, you know. So my brother's okay with that, and we're still watching MTV, and MTV's fading a little bit from having good music to doing whatever. And Guns N' Roses comes along and kills everything. There's a lot of great, fucking, interesting shit in the mid to late 80s as far as music goes. But I remember, as best as I can, probably the 9th or 10th grade, like being on the school bus listening to like Mission of Burma, you know, and the Minutemen, you know, and I know my brother wasn't doing that, you know, and so I was falling into some shit, and some of it was Thrasher telling me what to listen to, and some of it's just piecing it together like in a review, like this is this band that you like, Dinosaur Jr. and Jay sitting there talking about Mission of Burma or the Minutemen or blah, blah. SST, you start picking up on labels. This is where I want to do my own label. This is one of the impetuses that you could trust a label like SST to take you there. Like if I flipped in a record store and I was like, what is this? Oh, that's nice, cool. Flip it, it said SST. I got a 50-50 chance that's a pretty good fucking record. You know, that's important to me. That's an ethic. Discord is my hero on that.
Well, and signing up for mailing lists, like we hear that a lot, that record labels were the catalyst to exposure of all these really different
And
acts.
you could trust a label enough to get a 75-80% shot at getting a good record. Right. You stuck with them, and you know, you waited for them to fail because if they kept going, you're like fucking Nirvana, you know. So SST was big in my life, right? Discord eventually became pretty big, but initially there it was. You know, one band after another was like, I think I was, to be honest with you, I probably was liking the Lemonheads first on Tang. And then I looked at Tang and they've got Mission of Burma. Like, who the fuck is Mission of Burma? And that's not the label that they were on all the time, but they had a record on there, and I took that home and I was like, fucking amazing. You know, you get a Wire record by accident. You get a Minutemen record from SST. You know, I love the Descendants. One of our very first bands to fall in love with was the Descendants. 7 seconds, I love it. Fast thrash, but with some pop, because that's MTV, right? That's all that pop that I can never get away from, and that's gonna also reoccur in my entire life, is I can't do Metallica, I can't do metal, because I've got Joan Jett in my heart, you know? So even when you hear the bands that I did later on, you will always hear that 80s MTV shit. You always want to, and again, I'll play you my new band, but where I get to just do it, you know? But it is in your DNA, as much as the DIY is in your DNA, is you cannot fight that stuff. And maybe you rebel against it and turn your back on it and go, hey, I'm gonna do hair metal for the rest of my life. Great, I appreciate that. If it makes you happy, I do, but I can't. You know, I just can't. Like, it has to be melody, it has to be pop, it has to be a 3-minute long go-go song in there somewhere for me to enjoy it, right? So, you know, that's got its hooks in me already. We're doing pretty good with the skateboarding. We start to formulate the idea, me and my brother, of going to California, right? Because we want to turn pro. We want to do that. We want to skate.
California at this time is like this coveted place. It
Yeah.
sounds like, where things are possible.
Yes, and I've got, you know, some of the very first Lookout records from the Bay Area. I've got, you know, pretty good impetus of where the music is coming from inside of the state of California. Southern California has a different sound than Northern California, and what's happening in New York, and do I go there, and blah blah. And you know, I've got a ton of side stories. I don't want to go in depth. There was a brief crossroad in my life where I almost joined the Goo Goo Dolls, where I almost was the bass player for Screeching Weasel. I was had these decisions to go to, right? And that was from pen paling, which was big back then, right? Your pen pal could be anybody. It's like, hey, I'm into this and this and this. Do you want to trade tapes? And sooner or later, you're trading tapes with, whoever, right? And that's how the Goo Goo Dolls thing happened. But I turned all that stuff down because I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to do my own band. I didn't want to join anybody's band. I had my idea was to go to the California, turn pro, and start the band I wanted to be in, which is a confusing thing because I again, I love the Descendants. I loved Mission of Burma. I love the Minutemen. I love bands that made no sense to each other, right? Maybe Husker Du is the common link between all of it because they're pop and noise and all the things that I like. But so that was on the radar very early. And then me and my brother had something to live for. Okay, so even if we had to get in fights and we had to do whatever, it's like, fuck you clowns, I'm out one way or the other. You can have your pieces now, but as soon as I can get some gas money in a car, I'm gone.
There's
I'll
a
leave
story
you guys
after this.
Yeah,
This.
Right. And I was looking around when I was 17. Me and my brother had moved to a different part of Florida. I was looking around at some of these kids that had already graduated high school. They were 19, maybe 20, drinking beer in the woods like people do. And I'm just like, strangely, me and my brother were both straight edge back then. I was like, I'm not going to fucking die here like this. Yeah. Like this, fuck this.
Man.
Like what's the difference between high school or this? Now I'm just sitting here with you morons in the woods and you're all just drinking cheap beer. Like I got dreams, man. So, but you can't do those in Florida. Maybe you can now, but you couldn't back then. So I knew I had to go to California. So my story trajects a little bit different than my brother's, which means I went to California by myself. Gotcha. I went before him. He wasn't ready to go. He had a girlfriend. He had all kinds of things. I didn't have anything holding me back. So hopped on the Greyhound, $50, all my 7 inches in a paper bag, and took the Greyhound I sold my car because I was going to drive there, but sold my car and ended up on a couch, Pete and Greta's couch. They were nice enough to let me stay there for about a month, and then I went to live with Econochrist for a couple weeks, and then I ended up at the warehouse. And the warehouse was great. It's where I started all my projects. It's where I got started in the Bay Area, pretty good. And formed my very first band ever, unnamed. And it lasted very briefly, but I formed, you brought it up, I formed Jabberjaw on the side of that. Because that band was very hardcore and it wasn't very melodic. And I told you, I have to be ruled by melody. I have to, yeah. So, Jabberjaw is almost the ultimate extreme of that part of my personality, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't really know I wanted to take it that far, but, I was listening to Descendants before you guys got here. So it's not like I don't still love that shit. I do. But I didn't know it had its meat hooks like that. But I think when I met Aaron, he loved it too. And like one of the first things we did was we saw All Together or whatever it was. And so it was fun. But like, that's the start of it, is that it's got to be done. It's not coming to me. I've got to go get it kind of thing, which I don't see in a lot of people nowadays. And, that's that ugly drive that got me where I am, or got what I got out of it. Not where I am, but what I got out of it. And it's a good drive to have. It hurts, and it you live a different life, that's for sure. But I would have loved somebody to hand me something every once in a while that I could be satisfied with, but it just wasn't happening, And again, I am fond of saying this, particularly about Indian Summer, I can tell you why I wrote those songs, sure. It can be that simple, right? This song is about this or this song is about that. But if you weren't living like we were living, if you haven't been that poor, then I have a hard time telling you what that's all about, because it doesn't matter how much love I had in my life and how much good friendships we had and how wonderful everything was. We were living on, 40, 50 cents a day, ramen and potatoes. And my brother, at the dirtiest of it all, right when he first moved out, and I couldn't help him because I didn't have any money either. And, he would go days without eating. He slept on his pillow was towels and a fucking thing, and it's like, fuck, how do you explain that to somebody? You want to know what we're all about? Fucking try it. Try that. Because you need your DIY balls at that point, let me tell you, because you got to accept that you're not eating that day. And that's not easy for people to do, and people want to eat. I get that, but we were like, our motto for a long time was, first of all, motherfucker, we pay the studio that we practice in, that bill comes first. and then you pay your rent and you eat. But we're going to practice twice a week, 3 times a week, and that is non-negotiable. You know, that was between me and my brother. So we didn't want to go out and get some, you know, fancy anything because we needed the money for the studio, right? Because in California, there's no basements. You can't play in California. You have to have practice spaces, you know. So that's an extra, at that time, more than likely $200, $300 a month. It's hard to come up with, right? So, you know, that's a commitment.
Yeah, you have a good stubbornness that prioritizes things maybe greater than your own needs.
And I can tell you that I lived on potatoes and ramen, for quite a long time.
We've lived on dollar store frozen meals with Rob.
Yeah, we had
a homeless guy live in our...
Yeah, you gotta want it.
This Vietnam veteran.
You gotta want it, man.
And I let him live in our basement, and he'd build motorcycles in the backyard and give us rides. And all we had in that fucking house was fucking
dollar store
Michelina.
Got so sick so frequently.
But again, you know, when you do that,
I think it's good for you. As long as it's not permanent.
Because I will tell you, because now that I have my daughter, one of the things is, you know, you don't want her to be a trust fund kid because you don't like trust fund kids. Nobody does, right? I know that. Like, you don't pal around with trust fund kids. But at the same time, that poverty, there's a lesson in it. Sure there is. But that's not a lesson that I want anybody to go through. I don't want anybody to be that poor. However, I can tell you this unabashedly. I was very happy. I never thought to myself, I'm poor. I never thought that. I just accepted, well, it's ramen. You know, like I'll eat this potato and I'll enjoy it, you know. And I was in love. I had a great girlfriend. You know, you live like you live, man. You know, you do. And you try to enjoy it. You try to make the best out of it, you know. And it works most of the time. I do think that your money doesn't equate your happiness. I know lots of my clients have money and they're sad as shit. So, you know, I don't want to say it was all that negative, but what I was getting at is that it shaped that. And I read it in one of those reviews about omnidirectional anger or something like that. And that's a good way to put it. Sure. It's like, you know, you don't even know who to be mad at. You're just like, fuck, all I do is work this dead-end job, save up my money, go on tour. They fire me because I go on tour, come back, try to get another job. You know, I don't have enough money for a guitar. I don't, you know, whatever. And you just try and you do. And we did, let me tell you. And the world was easier to do that. I don't envy anybody now. I'm not pointing fingers now.
It's weird now. We've tried to. Yeah. It seems different.
I don't point fingers because the rent is so fucking high.
Yeah.
You know, our van was like $200.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You can't even get a steering wheel for $200.
We had a van for our first leg of the documentary. Then transmission failures. And I had to junk it. Yeah. You know, I couldn't do it anymore.
Nothing but that.
There's Jabberjaw. There's Sinker. Sinker happens.
Now Jabberjaw was great because we put that together. We recorded at Alex Sergey's, which is where, you know, Crimpshrine had recorded, my heroes had recorded. You know, so this is great. We were like living the dream, you know. And we were practicing in a garage in Concord, which was far from my house. And you know, our very first show was sold out Gilman Street. You know, it was surreal. Right, so my very first show that I could say this is a show in front of people was 500 screaming punk rockers at a Green Day gig, you know, opening up for them. And we went on tour that summer. Rando. Had some records, had some real good luck running into this person and that person. I put out a record, started my very first record label with my friend, with Jabberjaw. Got Jason in Minneapolis to agree to let us do a split with him, so we were rolling, man. Enough to book a tour. Or I thought we were good enough to book a tour, and we did. And that was through payphones and letters and cassettes in the mail, and, you know, hard to do, right? Hard to do. This was the first year, this was a year before Book Your Own Life came out, I think. I'm pretty sure that timeline works out right. And we had my good friend Jim, who came with us. He lived in San Francisco, one of my only San Francisco friends. He knew a band, I don't remember which one, but they had just gone on tour. Possibly Mr. T Experience, I want to say that, but probably not. But somebody like that. And we grabbed their list and we called these people and we're like, we're from Oakland, you know, we're a lookout band, sure, you know. And other than a few gigs and a little bit of car trouble, which everybody has, we randomly no-named it for 5 weeks across the United States of America. It was religious. It was great. I met everybody I met on that tour. I thanked with my record label by putting out a record with them. And we played with them, all of them again as Sinker, and all of them again as Indian Summer. So I was developing a family around the country, which was very, very nice, especially with Sinker. And it was a chance to meet some people that had stayed with me, or I had pen palled them, or we had blah, blah, blah. And that was very communion-esque, to meet these people in face to face, give them a hug, sleep on their floor, you know, make sure that we're all freaks together and that we're loving it and blah, blah. It was awesome. It was not as awesome with Jabberjaw because that was more nerve-wracking and, you know, like, my God, what the fuck are we even doing? Like, what are we going to do if this truck breaks down? We're in New Mexico. We're done. Cooked, right? Like, you know, I have to sell the Marshall to get home, you know? But it was fun, but the Sinker thing was like, this works. Like, now we got a scene. You know, if that's the word you want to use. I hate that fucking word, by the way. But
sure, but a community.
We got a community.
We
right.
have
we got a community. And I tell you, I still talk to a ton of people from back then. A ton of them. I just talked to Miguel the other day.
Yeah.
You know, people ask me, well, how did you pick the bands on your... When I first did Repercussion, which was right after Homemade, which I had started with my friend Owen to put out the Jabberjaw record and a couple other records, and I didn't let him. I want to do my own label because that's my big chameleon phase. I went from Jabberjaw to Sinker, right? So now I'm back to Discord instead of Descendants, you know. So everybody has to suffer through all my different personas, you know. But my brother's right there with me to make sure it's all correct. Like, are we doing right? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? We can be this band, you know. But the Jabberjaw that got released is not the Jabberjaw that went on that tour, by the way. The Jabberjaw that's on that tour never recorded, and I'm not fucking with you. You can edit this out too, but we sounded like Rites of fucking Spring.
Yeah.
Hand to God, like, I think like a month before we left for that tour, I just threw 6 songs together that sounded like Rites of Spring. Because I loved Rites of Spring.
Right.
And I was, already I was like...
Rites of Spring changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I heard that record for the first time. Some girl said, you'd like this band. And I don't know what the fuck gave her that impression, but she's like, listen to this shit. And I just remember the first fucking song. I think it was For One Of. And I'm like, there you go. There's that hook again. It's not letting go anytime soon, you know? Yeah, because it is.
There's melody.
It is. If you... I think I figured it out. If you slow the Bad Brains down,
you get Rites of Spring.
I swear. Because I heard Rites of Spring on the wrong speed one time.
And it was like, Bad Brains?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I get it, yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so we had already flipped that switch. And so much so that when we came back and played 1 or 2 of our last gigs underneath that name, they were like, you know, San Jose pop punk show. And we stuck out like a sore thumb.
Oh yeah,
and people were like, "What happened to you guys?" And I was like, "Fuck you!" You know, I'll play whatever I want to, you know. And so we had to change it. You know, I didn't like the name either, but it didn't make a difference. But we had to change it. And Sinker's a slowed down version of that for sure. Like there was other things. Like I have a Soul Side tattoo, but I don't like them. But you know, I don't. It's sad. But Ignition. I'm not a huge Fugazi fan, but they're in the mix there, just enough for me to reference them.
Yeah.
But some of that stuff, like Ignition was great. And some of that DC stuff I'm starting to really get into. And Sinker is absolutely 1000% me and my brother trying to be that type of band, right? And that was successful in that aspect, right? And that band failed miserably because we all hated the singer. And I can say that.
Okay.
He knows it. We're all civil.
Sure.
Now, but we couldn't tolerate it. And again, successfully, 4 or 5 week tour around the United States of America, hugging people, loving it, and just fucking, let's go to New Jersey and meet our friend and go play with them, and let's go to Poughkeepsie, let's go to New Hampshire, let's go to Utah.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's invaluable.
Yeah, and I don't know why people can't do it anymore, and I don't really give a shit, you know, because we did it with...
You can, and I mean, we did it through this vessel.
You know, I do believe that, and I'll mouth off about that at times, and people are like, it's not 1990 whatever anymore. I was like,
you just have to want it.
There wasn't a handbook for it back then either, except for we didn't have a cell phone.
Right.
You know, that would have been easier. So, you know, success, it was always hard to do it, but we never did not do it.
Right.
And that was important because then we wouldn't stop. Then it was whatever came into my fucking head, I could do it. Hey, I did the first record label. That was pretty fucking easy. Why don't I not do it with a partner? And I'll start leaning into, you know, the idea that I've always had, which is one record should kind of sort of almost sound like the other one and blah, blah. Fortunately, all of my friends were in like similar bands, right? You know,
so there's a cohesion.
So the idea was there. I was like, I'll just do that. I won't give a shit if it sells. I got my friend telling me he'll take 25 copies of the first one. Let's go. You know, and that label was started off a that one, either Homemade or that one. When I got laid off, that was like a unemployment check that started that record. So the government paid for that one. Yeah, it was pretty good. But I lucked into it because if you lived in the Bay Area in the 90s, like I did, there wasn't anything that wasn't there for you. So we had full distributions lined up. We had Maximum Rock and Roll was in San Francisco. We were the heart of it. Gilman, for God's sakes, you know, we were there. And by the time we'd gotten around to Indian, just skipping a little bit. So Sinker actually, one more thing. Yeah, one more thing. Yeah, one more thing. It is. It's the three of us, when we got rid of the singer, we just took on Mark, and that's the original incarnation of Indian Summer. So nothing really changed. Sinker was the first time where I was so in Jabberjaw, I didn't ask anybody what they thought. I didn't give a shit. I'm still too young. Don't care. I thought it was pretty good. And we fortunately were playing in front of a lot of people at times, right? And even on the tour, right? Because I think the scenes were really popping in the 90s, right? Early 90s. People were like, I want to do this, right? What do we do every Friday? We go to this club and we go watch whatever band fucking shows up, right? And plus, again, we had that Bay Area thing going on. I think so maybe a few more people showed up than they wanted to. But, you know, I didn't worry about it then. Sinker, I felt like when we played, even though my brother and I don't really kind of see eye to eye on it now, he doesn't think it was very tight or very good. And I know it's because we had our differences with the singer, but that's the first time when we were playing shows, at least on tour, where I thought we were making pretty good music. Pretty unique music. We would go play with other bands in the Bay Area at varied places, because I don't think Sinker ever played Gilman, which is very odd and peculiar to me, but I don't think we did. Because Scott was from Sacramento, so we played a lot in Sacramento, of all places. But I knew when I was playing with that band for the very first time in my life that I was making something that I said, fuck you if you don't like this. Like, this is pretty interesting shit. Like, I'm doing some pretty interesting shit on the guitar, and if you don't like it, you can kiss my ass, right? You know, and that rolled a little bit into Indian Summer, but one of the reasons that it did was for whatever reason, Indian Summer was the easiest band I ever did. Really? Which means by the time we had broken up Sinker and started under the name Indian Summer and debated our very first show, which was Kent McClard in Santa Barbara put it on in a storage container unit, I think was our very first show. So we played in the unit and everybody stood outside the unit, but we played in front of like 20 people. It was nice. It was very cool for a first show. Even that show, it was the very first time ever from start to finish that we didn't have to do a whole lot of work. Like, I didn't ask anybody to play. They asked us to play, and that was thrilling. And when we went on that tour, I saw the people show up for the first time. Like, I was like, these people are here to see us. This is it. This is us. Nobody else is here tonight. You know, they're not here to see the opening band, obviously. So there was a huge confidence going through that band that, to me, landed too late in my life. Meaning I didn't see it, and I should have. And there's just that little piece of me that just didn't give a fuck whether anybody enjoyed it or they didn't. I wasn't doing it for them. You know, I was a rolling disaster back then. I was train wrecking my way through everything, you know, like barrel full steam ahead. You're either I'm going to roll you over or run you over or
hammer and nail.
Yeah, whatever. Just get the fuck out of my way, you know? But, you know, we had a brief conversation at the end of the band, and they had pointed out, my brother maybe had pointed out to me, he said, you just don't see it. And I was like, I don't give a fuck, you know? Like, don't see what? Like, this is my fourth band. I'm going to start another one tomorrow. What do I give a shit about this band, you know? But people were digging it. It was the wrong time to implode that band. That would have been an interesting thing had we done another year in that band. It really would have.
Indian?
Yeah. Because I was moving in such a bizarre little way musically that if we had tried to fit it in that box, I think people that liked Indian Summer would have hated it, but it would have been really interesting with that group of people. Would have been a little more interesting than Daredevil turned out to be, I think.
Right.
But you know, again, that was easy, and there was a great confidence underneath all that for the very first time in music, which made it easier for us to be who we wanted to be, to say, maybe foster a sound around that kind of thing, because I wrote all that stuff very quickly, 4 or 5 of those tunes in like one day. And that was the band.
Pretty strange.
And I was like, now we have to be that, because I've got 5 of these we got to work out.
Right.
Yeah, and I didn't write very much after that, so I don't. There are 10 songs I think, but two of them I had fleshed out during Sinker, so I didn't do a whole lot. So we had 7 or 8 initially, probably 7, and then the other ones just sounded like the other ones. So it was terrible for me. I was like, no. And then the boys were chipping in, and I didn't want to sing anymore. So my brother was singing, Mark was singing, and those guys were great. And we got Ed on drums, and that's a whole podcast right there. Just, finally being surrounded by A, like-minded individuals, and B, somebody like Ed with Ed's talent for the first time. I've always played great drummers, by the way. But Ed was on another fucking level, and so the weirdness that was in my fucking head seemed to come out in the room, and these guys the boys seemed to grab it and turn it into gold. And it was great. I didn't try that hard in that band, to be honest with you. I did not. I'm willing to admit that on tape. I wrote that shit, and then I didn't want to write that shit no more. And that's the plain truth of it. Like, I couldn't. It wasn't that I didn't want to, it was I couldn't. And again, this is where you're getting me at being the chameleon that I am, because then I'm listening to Bedhead, and then I'm listening to Rodan, and I'm listening to Codeine more. Well, we were listening to a lot of Codeine, and I'm like, this is not, Indian Summer is not any of this. Like, it is and it isn't, right? It's a lot of Slint. I'm guilty, but it's not. By the time we even put that shit to vinyl and recorded it, I was already on something else. So I didn't have a thrilling time in that band. To be honest with you, meaning it was like, it wasn't going through the motions, but like I needed to be pretty lit to have an experience with that music.
And from what it sounds like, from what I've read, is you guys hammered out shows in a short amount of time.
Yes.
And
yeah. We didn't play that
Played
long.
some crazy bills though.
Yeah.
You were on some
Yes,
crazy
and that was
bills.
okay by me actually. And again, one of the reasons why I said it was so easy was because people were starting to put it together. And when we went on that tour, we were a day or two behind Still Life or Heroin, where everybody was out there.
Yeah.
And we would convene at points, and you would see the flyer. I'm sure people see those flyers and like shit themselves. Like, oh my God, did that really happen? Yeah, but that was common in a weird way. Like I playing with Jawbreaker to me was like, okay, Saturday. Like I should have been more in the moment. Like, wow, but I played with Unwound a lot. Everybody you can think of. Captain Jazz. That's just a seriously not interesting phenomenon, because that was pen pal to my brother. We're coming to Chicago. Obviously, we're playing together. Right. It doesn't matter if anybody knows who the fuck they are. That's
pen paling Captain Jazz. That's crazy.
Yeah. My brother was very busy back then. Very, very busy. And he would call people he would call the dudes in Current. They would talk to each other every fucking night. Every night. And my brother would no money would be running this bill. And I'm like, I hope they're fucking calling you, but.
There's a collective consciousness happening though at this time that represents itself sonically.
Yes.
And I want to fast forward decades. And in retrospect, I mean, what is your reaction to this seemingly short-lived part of your life and it being kind of rediscovered via the internet?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've read or researched what people speak about it, like on things like Reddit, or, I mean, is it at all surprising? Is it?
Well, one of it's like all great art. It seems like nobody gave a shit when you were around, and all of a sudden
when you die, it's fucking,
everybody's like, oh shit, yeah. You would think one of us died the way some people treat it, but we're all still alive. Hard to say. I tell you, I told somebody once that I'm on. I lost count, but I mean I'm on over 30 something pieces of vinyl, right? Me personally, and I've been in a dozen bands. And that was just one band for 1 year. And again, part of my chameleon act, so, and I disappoint people because I tell people that's not my favorite band. That is not my favorite band.
What is?
Any band I'm in right now is my favorite band, okay, right? And I'm in 4 of them, okay? So again, with all multi-facets of my loves are represented in those 4 bands. So again, what I was trying to get at earlier was that I think I understood it at the time, that there was something else going on here. I'm not stupid. Like, I got that. Like, when you hear applause, you're like, okay, nobody's making you do that. Like, thank you. That I'm humbled. But, I wasn't doing it for that reason. I wasn't there for them. I could give a shit if they liked it or they didn't. I didn't count heads. We barely got paid, you know. I would tell you that we never suffered with that band, that we always got paid. Even if it was $50, that was $50 we deserved. You know, it's fine. I didn't come here for $1,000, you know. But now, why do they like it so much? Probably for what you guys are talking about out loud, is that, you know, it's a pretty good representation of an honest integrity band, hardworking band that hopped in a van and did it, you know. And if I got the crazy in me to come to your town, the least you could do is come see it, you know. And that was the handshake deal back then. Is I'm going to come to New Hampshire and you're going to show up and watch me play, you know. And again, when Sunday night is heroin and Friday night is still life, Saturday night you can do a little Indian summer on Saturday night. It's okay, you know. People were treating it like that. They'd go to all three. I don't think there was like we're picking and choosing, but yeah, my brother says it better than I do. I mean, I'm sure it's humbling and it's flattering and it's interesting. I don't know. I'm probably not even the one to even ask that, because I wasn't, like, if you look at my record collection, you know, or ask me, you know, I didn't sit through a lot of those shows to be a dick about it. So, you know, I was in the van drinking instead of watching the bands. So it's not like I was sitting around listening to a lot of that stuff that we played, people that we played with. I like Captain Jazz. They're okay. I'm not going to say they're not a great band. They're fine. But that's not what I put on. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I didn't think we were ever going to stick like that. I thought everybody would put us to the side and say, well, this is what was going on, and you guys are just freaks, and you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and which is more than true. And even in the Bay, I felt like we'd meet people, and everybody was great. Everybody was great. But like band-wise, like connecting with bands, I didn't feel like we connected with anybody. I felt like we were from outer space, and I thought we were going to be buried that way, and that's okay. You know, I was fine with it. And, you know, I didn't put our names on the records. I didn't title some of this. You know, it's just like, it wasn't pretentious. It was just like, it's part of that laissez-faire attitude, you know, like, if you like it, you like it. You know, I'm not here to do it the way you think it's going to be done. I'm just going to do it. And if you dig it, you dig it. You dig it, you know. Turns out people do. That's fine by me, honestly. Yeah, but again, still sort of the same attitude. It's like, I don't give a shit if you do or you don't. You know?
Yeah, no.
Still to this day, I don't give a shit, you know. Yeah.
I like it. And what, because you still participate in music now, what function do you think that sort of music deals with, you know, catharsis,
yeah,
for lack of a better word? What function do you think it was serving you? Was it an outlet to be, this rowdy fanatic guy? Did it serve something deeper? Did it? I mean, what do you think you were getting from it?
Yeah, we opened up the floodgates with Jabberjaw when we did, like I told you, we turned that kind of right to spring bed. Yelling into a microphone seemed to be way more thrilling than singing, which I wasn't good at anyway. So yelling seemed to be the impetus of like, hey, maybe we can do it this way, or maybe we can do it that way. So that was number one. And then you don't want to yell, hey, I love you. So you've got to find something to yell about, right? And my love-hate with my own voice and the idea of writing my own lyrics, which I always did, also kind of serviced up with that band, where that's why I stopped singing midway through. You know, yeah. That's an interesting question. That stuff's all accurately put omnidirectional anger and a lot of pain. And, you know, you deal with it however you can. And, you know, being on my own, maybe not having the greatest, you know, whatever. Not a terrible childhood, but not, you know, maybe not the most functional one. Let's just say that. You know, and you see a door open that you can just start screaming into the void. And it feels pretty good, and people are reacting pretty good to it. You get a little into it, I think. And, you know, I think the first couple shows, I was like, people like that. I was a little nervous about it, you know. And I had actually really been, you know, on a Moss Icon kick, and the hated were yelly at times, but Moss Icon especially, John and them, they're very, you know, spoken word kind of shit. I was into that. And some of the early,
I fell in love
some of the early Indian Summer stuff is very much in tune with that.
Woolworm is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of that,
absolutely,
in my opinion.
Absolutely. And, you know, to know me, I won't shy from that. You know, that the band could easily be put down to being a Moss Icon clone or a Slint clone, or whatever. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's if it was anybody other than me, it may have come off even worse. But I'm really good at, I'm like the Thing, like I can just absorb and pretend that I'm something else, you know. So I took Tony and John for all they were worth, you know, and huge influences on me. The Hated was Right to Spring, Husker Du, which is throughout all of those bands is always Husker Du. And you know, creeping around on the guitar a little bit more, you hear Spiderland for the first time and your brain just goes, you know, like fuck it, let's quit life until we can do it this way. You know? So Indian Summer is also a cheap shot at that. You know, it's people, you know, 1 or 2 years into Spiderland, because it had just come out in '91 or whatever it is. So we hadn't had a chance to absorb it.
Digest
you know, yeah. And I did with Moss Icon. I was into them very rare. I used to trade records with Tony back when the split LP was around. So I was listening to that for a long time. And you know, there's also, if I can say this, I don't know if you guys want to use it in film, but you know, me and my brother, I told you, when we were coming out, you know, everybody around us is drinking warm beer, they're smoking dope, all this kind of shit. And you know, in Miami, when you see half your city devastated by crack, it's not like the punk rock thing to do is let's go do some drugs. Like, that's not punk, right? It's punk to say, fuck that.
Fuck that,
you know,
I'm doing this.
So we did that. And, you know, it took my brother a little bit longer than me, but, you know, we'd always be drinking 40s, and everybody in the Bay Area was doing that. But the Bay Area's little dirty secret is there was a shit ton of meth fucking everywhere in the 90s. And I never touched that stuff. My brother's never done that shit. I don't fucking do uppers. And so again, there's the cheap beer. And I didn't want to smoke weed because, you know, A, it costs money, and B, you know, to me somehow that's like, yeah, that's hippie shit. I don't fucking care. You know what I mean? But turns out, I've been smoking a little bit, but Eyad was a fucking pothead, you know, and he's like, you guys got to try this shit. And, you know, it's almost like there's Indian Summer pre-Eyad and there's Indian Summer post-Eyad. And that's one of the big fucking reasons. I hate to be cheap about it, but I got to tell you, you know, when you play a guitar for the first time stoned, like that's it. You ain't no going back. I'm just like, nope, fuck all that, you know. And so we were, you know, first year potheads in Indian Summer. Sinker, I had, shit, my mom's gonna watch this, but you know, I had experimented with some other shit, but you know, not weed, not every day. And I'd smoked a little bit, and when I'd go visit my friends in Texas, we'd be high all the time. So I wasn't new to it, but with Eyad, it was like, you know, here's some primo shit, do this, do that. You put on the Slint record and the Codeine record, records you've heard before, and then all of a sudden you're stoned, you're just like, okay, I got it. You know? And that's where I wrote some of the other things later, came from that. And so they're a little bit more repetitive of the early stuff. But if you can believe it, I think the first batch, maybe not, it's hard to say. Possibly the first batch might have been written pre-stoner, whatever. But we were a stoner band. We were. And Mark was a former major pothead. So him and Eyad had already had all that worked out. And me and my brother were just getting introduced to the magic, right, you know what I mean? And that was really at play. So if you ever saw an Indian Summer practice, you would have seen us in all our glory. Like, we played some really crazy live shows, and I was glad people got to see that part of us. But when we had the 40s on the floor and we were rolling things and we were oh man, I wish we had cell phones or something to record that stuff. It was beautiful. We could never redo it. That's why we started improvising all the time, because we were trying to get at that vibe that we had in the practice space where nobody ever said, let's play this song. It was just like 2 hours of continuous playing. Somebody was always playing, and then you'd hop in, and then all of a sudden, bam, we're into this song. And so we started doing that live within the first 3 months. And then, like I said, I kind of stopped singing after a while, or whatever I was doing. I don't know. And, you know, a lot of that's it's terrible. A lot of that is, you know, certainly pot, you know. It just is, you know. It's like, that's a pretty pothead idea. Like, well, I'm not going to sing anymore because, you know, I'm not. Yeah, you know?
I think I read a comment from you of saying if there were ever a universe in which Indian Summer played another show, it'd be like an hour to 2 hour long improvised.
I would do that. I would do that.
Just totally.
If Slint got back together and Codeine and everybody did that, I would do that, but everybody would hate us because we would improvise for an hour.
I bet,
for sure. Because Eyad's weirder, and my brother is weirder, and I am weirder than we were back then. And so we could definitely do it. And we toyed with it, and we kind of have maybe we'll get Mark to agree to it one day, but, you know, we have we have some ideas. You know, and that would be one of the ideas, is showing up some day, maybe the four of us, and at a one place, one time, and improvise for an hour, and somebody catches it and they can say whatever. You weren't there anyway, I'll only do it if like 2 people show up though. I won't do it for anybody more than that, but
okay.
But I'm making records with my brother, I always have plans to go visit Iyad. I should. I talk to Mark every once in a while, every blue moon. So, making music is always fun. Being expected that you do something is worse. Because even people don't grasp that about that band in particular anyway. Is that, I wanted to give you your $5 worth, which means that I wasn't going to go up there and improvise for a whole hour by myself, right? I wasn't going to do that. Like, you get the songs you came for. I'm willing to do that, okay? But I also have to have fun. And I also have to be me. I also have to be experimenting and stoned and all these things, so you got a pretty unique experience, at least on the tour anyway, certainly when we came home too, but of what Indian Summer you were going to get. You get a song or two, you get the hit. We played the hit. We played the one you showed up to hear. Sure. I'll give you that one, but even then it would self-destruct. It would never be correct, and that's the one I improvised the lyrics on the most too, so it would never get that one day's worth of lyrics, which, to be quite frank with you, I'm not quite sure they were ever written down anywhere. And whatever ended up happening on those records, I don't think was just more or less intentional for that day, to be honest with you. I don't know. I think my brother and Mark probably wrote their stuff down, but I think my brother would twist a little bit, but, I could sing anything. And I would, because, the way that I did in the studio at times wasn't the way I really wanted to do it. I really had John Vance up in my head. Like, I really want to do like a Moss Icon thing here. And I was allowed that in certain songs, but, the screaming is weird. It just is. And without that right to spring love and all that kind of stuff, I never would have ever attempted that. Like, that was all, I can literally tell you, I probably before the very first show, never sang or screamed anything at practice. We didn't have a vocal mic at practice. Never did. So the vocals got worked out by whoever sang them, whoever wanted to do it. So probably the first time I did it was the first time, and I remember screaming it and kind of like, whoa, being taken back a little bit by that, but also that it worked. I was like, it's all right. I'm doing a pretty good, Guy impression. It's working. So, yeah. But, that's also part of the big deal is like, even from the early MTV days to go backwards is I'm pretty good at that. I'm pretty good at, like I said, being the thing, it's just absorbing it.
Chameleon seems to be a through line through all of your...
That's why I can't be one thing. I can't just do this one band forever. And every band I was ever in, except for the ones I'm in now, but was like a year.
Yeah.
Because it's just, that's fine and dandy. I did that. But
I think it keeps it pretty pure, the work that you did do, without tainting it with any other...
Yeah, but it would have been interesting... Like with We All Inherit the Moon, like I kept going with that, and it was transforming and moving in the right direction. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know you could be in a band longer than a year. Like you can grow as a band. That seems like an odd, peculiar thing. But my brother said it too. Is like back then, in particular, that was not unusual. By the way, like a band being a band for 6 months.
Oh, sure. I mean, we see
making the most amazing fucking shit you ever heard, and then that's it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, or turning into supergroup number 2 with this band and that band, you know what I mean? So you get a band like Jawbreaker that sticks around for a while and you grow with them, and they alienated some people in the end for that too, They should have quit when they were ahead maybe, right? So that was our real breakup plan, was to quit while we were ahead. And that, we were gonna make a less personal, intimate thing out of it. Where we were going to try to be a little more bedhead, or we were going to try to be a little bit more this or that. And, we all just said, that's embarrassing. We're going to embarrass ourselves. That's not what anybody's coming to see us for. And then that kind of woke me up and said, yeah, but I don't want to play what everybody wants to see us do anymore. And we were getting really good at, being us, going on a stage and being us for a half an hour, because our shows were real short sometimes. 45 minutes max, maybe 40 minutes was our length. And a lot of improv, a lot of fun, when you're stoned, that's fun. I don't know if the audience liked it, but, and I think we could have done that. I think we could have transformed into something like that. And that would have been beating, because I do play free jazz with my brother, and I have played free jazz in other bands.
Cool, man.
That would have been beating that by 10 years, and we were free jazz. We were
I
doing
I
a
hear
ton of
this
improv.
comparison all the time with that music. I showed it to Elof, who's like a jazz head, and I showed him some really screamy, frantic, spazzy shit, and he said, "That's just free jazz."
Absolutely,
Man,
absolutely. I mean,
that's just Sun Ra, but fucking kids
and that's what my brother has been doing for the past 15 years in a duo, a trio and a duo. Is he's been playing free jazz drums, right?
Sure.
And I have free jazz bands. I still have one. I have one with my brother, still. So that was not intentional, which means that I didn't find 1967 era Coltrane until 2 or 3 years later. But so that was just madness,
Sure.
wildness, and right, absolutely. Orchestra, Pharoah Sanders, he is screaming into that saxophone. Yes. It's coming out as notes, but he is literally, you can hear him yelling into that. So yes, absolutely, he's doing that. Very comparable. And once you start riffing and jazzing, and I always thought like Mos Eisley was very jazzy, in the best way. Like I fucking can't stand jazz. Like, I really can't. Like, I can't tolerate that shit. But John's cadence and the way that they were doing that was very like anything can happen kind of thing. And especially the first times you listen to music like that, Lungfish struck me like that at times too. Even though they would not venture off, you just felt uncomfortable that they could at any point. And that's Sonic Youth and all those types of bands that I've been listening to for a long time. I wanted that shit in there. I wanted that to creep in there. And if you ever saw me play, at any given point in any song, I'm not playing the guitar anymore. I've got the fucking microphone stand and I'm just going gons on it, and I'm trying to make as much noise as possible, Mission of Burma style, Sonic Youth style. I didn't want to be up there playing chords all day and giving the people what they wanted and blah, blah, blah. And that's one of the things that I don't like is that we recorded everything far too early. So we didn't get any of the madness in there. It was so very straightforward. And I like that people like it, but that's really not what we sound like.
Interesting.
It's not. It's weird.
I'm very curious to hear those unrecorded sessions.
And even Sinker had a better energy post the recordings. The recordings are very tame. And so that's been something me and my brother have talked about a lot. Is I think Ed was in the band, if this is true, and I could be overstating this, I think he was in the band for 2 weeks.
No shit.
Yeah. So we practiced with him for the very first time, and then 2 weeks later we went and recorded. Now, he was taking it apart after that, once he knew what the fuck we were doing. But I mean, he got it. I mean, I want you to know he got it and then some. Like, those songs had never been recorded, so he didn't have anything to really go off of.
Sure.
He just had the bare bones of whatever, and he killed it. And so those recordings are good. They're just, they're tame, that's all. And there's barely any guitar overdubs on that. So that's just the band in a room, vocals, and we're out.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's not a recording session, that's a live show. So the second round of recordings, still a little rushed, but we're getting a little noisier, and I'm liking that a little bit better, but still not anything like if you saw us play live. Like, I don't know why. I don't know. I think we were all nervous. I think my brother even said, like, are we gonna do this like it's a live show? Like, shouldn't we be tight? And I was like, I guess. Like, so, I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. And so, like, Current, and this is how he knows these people, right? He's like sending these things off. And this is why we're connecting so well with Sinker and all these things, because we're actually playing with bands that we sound like in a weird way, right? Instead of some of the left field bills that Indian Summer ended up on a lot of times too. But that helps grow that community. So everybody wants to know that. Did anybody call you emo? And did anybody blah? Yes and no. Yes, in that we knew we were part of a very small subculture of people that we could go to their town and their 10 fans would buy our record. Right, so that is that. So that does exist. But the blanket term that it is now, no way in fucking hell, right? I would be rich. I would have made money, right? So, you've also got that working for you and working against you. Right? Maximum Rock and Roll Tim notoriously put his foot down and said, no more of this shit. I don't like this fucking music. Notoriously said that, right? And I'm like, man, that sucks for us. I'm okay with it. It's your magazine, So you're getting backlash also at the same time kind of thing too. So it's just a lot, So Plunger could have came and played Gilman and probably nobody would have showed up, But the band that sounded like Rancid shows up and everybody wants to be there. So it's still alienated, right, to a degree. It's still, what's a Moss icon? What's a, I think the band that lost it the most that deserved it the most, I don't know there's a phrase for that, like didn't get their flowers or whatever it is, is Hoover.
Yeah.
And Hoover was fucking incredible.
Electro Lux
incredible.
is a great
The
track.
records are incredible. They're live. They were, oh my God, we synchro played with them a couple of times actually, and they were like, I was like, I'm doing that band next. They're probably, inspired Indian Summer more than any. I was like, we could do that. We need to do that. Never got their due. Never. Everybody slept on that band and slept on them, and for whatever reason, the kids would rather have seen, who can blame them, but Antioch Arrow.
Sure.
And not Hoover. I remember that. I think that gig was us, Antioch Arrow, and Hoover, and I remember we played and whatever. Hoover played and cleared the place out for whatever reason. And people were coming back in, but they were leaving. I was like, how could you leave in the middle of this? And then Antioch Arrow goes on and there's 100 fucking people all of a sudden. But it's their town. It's okay. It's fine. It's a hometown kind of thing. But, that was a couple times. And, I've talked to Joe and Fred and all those guys before. They're wonderful dudes. And again, I just think probably the most criminally ripped off thing that people should have gotten was that. Like Mos Icon's too outer space, like too local. Like had they toured, I think all gloves are off. I do think that, and I think if they hated it, then the same thing. But being just from DC is being just from DC. Can't help it, right? So, but that's part of the thing is you're either in the foxhole with somebody next to you like Plunger or Vine or whatever, and that's an okay thing to be in a foxhole with that person. But at the same time, you're both stuck in some little foxhole and nobody wants to go. There's no emo night. There's no, it's an emo show.
Suck,
yeah. So, but the punk rock shows that you see when you see that flyer that says Captain Jazz Indian Summer, blah blah, that's important. But most of the time it was us, thrash band, hardcore band, blah blah blah, whoever is in town. Again, that's why I slept on a lot of that stuff too. But I wondered if it had been more congealed and centered around things. If we could have made that work a lot better. And I'm sure it did. I'm not sure I know it did, right? Obviously, it became a word in the English language and made somebody a lot of money, right? Yeah, so not necessarily due to me, but that's the other really loaded question I get asked all the time. And I guess it must mean something to somebody, but that's not even really a thing.
What's that? What question?
I get it all the time. It's like always the last question, like, what does the word emo mean to you, or whatever it is, And it's like, it doesn't mean anything to me, It's My Chemical Romance, if I'm using that right. I don't know.
That's how it's perceived to everyone. Pierce the veil. And
that's fine. It's fine, because what we were was four dudes in a van, hoping you would come see us, and can I stay on your floor? That's it. Punk rock band, just like when I was 12. It's punk fucking rock, man, My best friend, Kyle, to not my credit, but he did that soundtrack. That's our band, but that's pretty much him and him. Yeah. But we still do that thing, and he lives in Memphis now, which is great. So I've got that.
Very cool.
I am in a current trio, free jazz trio, with my brother and my good friend Scott. I'm in a new wave band project with my good friend Scott. I'm in my long-term good buddy Josh and I from Oakland are in Troubled Beast, and we did a record a couple years ago. We got a new one coming out too, so it keeps me busy, right? And it's it would be nice if I could just do one band, but that goes back to everything we just said. It's impossible. I can't do it. It's just like, I don't know that I would be me if I could. Right? I don't know how people do that. It must be fun. Must be enjoyable.
so amidst all these musical projects, walk me through like where Moonshine really becomes.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's born of a frustration and a love and a livelihood and a whatever. And one of the greatest things about it is, my knees won't allow me to do a whole lot. So to stay involved in skateboarding seemed like I needed to figure that out, right? I need to figure out a way to do it without actually punishing my knees anymore or punishing my back too much, right? And riding vert as you get older can hurt real bad. And street's not much better. And now all the parks are concrete, and that hurts really bad when you fall. So, I'm showing up with knee pads like this, and my helmet and everything. And there's a 6-year-old McTwisting out of the shallow end, padless.
That's how I feel.
Padless, and I'm like, okay, fuck you, man. But it's just like music. You don't know why you do it, but you know you're going to do it till you're dead. And so I needed to find a way to do that. And I thought about a lot of things, and again, the real impetus was, you mentioned Creature, and it was like, if there were 10 of those to choose from, I may never have done Moonshine. I was just desperate. I was like, man, yeah, I could go on eBay and buy a board from 1987 and ride that. And I was, to be honest with you, I was. Because I wasn't liking the new stuff. And it's the same thing like when I did the label. I'm like, fuck it, I'll just do it myself, and let's just go. And the idea was to do, exactly what I wanted. Some shaped vert boards, old school looking, maybe some old school street shapes with some graphics that I liked, right? Like 80s type graphics, Pusshead in particular, end of stories, Pusshead, right? Greatest fucking shit of all time. But you got Cliver and you've got these guys from the 90s that are also fucking killer, right? So I'm like, it can be done. And, I reached out to an artist or two and, David D'Andrea. Sorry, that's the guy who did the Ben Schroeder graphic.
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Right. And,
Yeah,
he's infamous. I mean, he's a rad guy. But yeah, I remember negotiating with him and I was like, how much? But he was worth it, right? He's worth it. But I was running into that concept like, okay, well, yeah, that's a lot of money for a graphic, but okay, fine. And I just joined the medical field, so I had a little bit of money. And then I ran into, I think, Alston, another artist. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Like, I give this guy this much money and I get back this kind of art and I put it on this deck, and I got to find somebody to shape it and all this kind of stuff. And it just seemed, without a dollar being spent, very fucking feasible to do that. And I didn't understand why more people didn't do it. And I wish I had asked more because it is a pain in the ass. It fucking is. It's a royal pain in the ass. And you got to know what you're doing to avoid losing a lot of money initially. And I didn't. So I showed you that deck, and that's a horror story. But once I got in with Penswood, I had Rich Lopez, I had Gabby. So I did the same thing before even the freestyle part of it, where I said to myself, I want to build a team. It's always, to me, going to be about a team, right? Okay. And I want to build a team, like the Raiders, like someone you are in fear of when they show up, right? So let's hope to God 3 or 4 of them don't show up together, because there's first, second, and third place right there. That's what I wanted, fear of God shit. And, but I also wanted diversity, not in that cheesy ass way, but I know that women skate, and I want the best woman skateboarder alive, right? And I got her. I did. I got Gabby Ponce. And I wanted some old guys like me because I wanted to prove that we could still do it. Okay, not I couldn't do it, but I wanted to prove that we could still do it. So I got Rich Lopez, and Chris Gilfus right off the start. And those guys are, Rich, I think Rich was a year older than me even. Maybe if he's not, he's my age. Motherfucker's blasting 10 feet in the air still, right? It can do any trick you can imagine. One of the best skateboarders I ever seen alive, right? So I'm putting everybody together. Plus I got Ben Schroeder. And again, it's just like that magic DIY. Like, yeah, I can do it. I can do it. If I can get a little bit of money scrounged here and there, I can do it. How do I get into the distribution side? Fuck all that. Who gives a shit? Let's go. So I came out of the gate swinging.
Head first.
Swinging. I had 7 or 8 people on my team, and no one had ever heard of me before. And I had by the first year and a half had gone by, I think that's when Clay won Vert Attack. I had Clay Kreiner on my team. I had Yake Olsen. I think Vert Attack, we got first place in every division there. And I think Gabby may have just quit skateboarding at that point, but she could have easily won the women's. I was like, there you go, motherfucker. Now you tremble, right? Now you tremble. But, along with all your good intentions is the idea that you have to have people ride for you and they have to have a loyalty to that kind of team. And really, with skateboarding, other than a few of them, really, it's a little bit more individualistic than I thought it was, right? Which means that everybody had their own opinion about what was happening. And everybody said, why are you having this many people on this team? Why can't it just be me and me and me and me, and you give me all the money, and I'll make it happen, and blah, blah. So there was way too much of that. But at certain points in the first 2 years of that team, I had put together a monster from outer space that was amazing to see. You know what I mean? And I didn't think I could do that. I was picking people and I was like, yeah, I want the fucking best. Like, you got to be the best to be on this fucking team. And I was getting them. But I was getting them before they were the best. I was getting them because I could see it, And I was very surprised when some of them said, yeah, they'd come on board. And I almost at one point had quite a squad. It would have been, I don't want to say their names, but it would have been 4 or 5 deep. And these guys are the rulers. It would have been interesting. It would have been impossible financially to handle them, but it would have been fucking amazing. Even if it was just for a little while, it would have been amazing to have had that. But I did have quite a team at some point. And, you know, that was it. I was feeling like we're doing it. However, I told you guys this, I was losing the original concept, which was the shaped decks in the 80s and the 90s spirit, because nobody was appreciating that. Like, it was like, oh, well, here's this person, this person, this person. And even those guys were not really appreciative of how much effort I put into the graphics and whatnot. They were, can't my board be this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know, at some point, I think I even told everybody, you can ride whatever the fuck you want, but I'm not putting out popsicles anymore, you know? And it just, everybody talked me out of it. Everybody's like, nobody wants your shape decks. And I just listened to it too much. And I was like, fine, you know, and I was getting distribution, and we were working on the UK and Japan at the same time, and things were happening. And I caved in a little bit, you know. I was like, fuck, make your popsicles then, you know, we'll just do it. And then the thing that rescued me about 2 years in was Chris Hudson had introduced me to Tony Gale. And Chris had said, you know, you should think about putting out freestyle decks. That could work really well. Chris was my distributor in the UK. He's like, it'll work really well here. And, you know, again, I told you guys, when I was growing up, that was the thing that happened. It was vert and freestyle. That was it. So I was like, fuck yeah, sure. I was like, at first I said, who makes those decks? Like, are those weird? Are they made from wood? You know? And, you know, I called the dude at Penswood, and he's like, yeah, man, I got fucking freestyle molds here from a company called Capital. I think Tony told me who they were, that had folded a long time ago, and he had the molds. And I was like, so we can make freestyle decks? He's like, fuck yeah. I was like, all right. He's like, I'll give you a deal. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, right? Totally. So this is where it got to be my fruition from start to finish to even today. I got together with Tony and I said, what do these boards look like? Because when I was growing up, they were really funky. And he's like, no, everybody rides like a fucking popsicle. And I was like, no. And he's like, yes, no. Right? So he's right off the bat, he's with me. He's like, we're not doing any popsicles. I'm like, right. And he's like, we're not doing any deck over, you know, 7.5. And I was like, right. Like, I understand what he's talking about. No, but I'm like, right. As long as it's not a popsicle, right? So he shows me with a pencil drawing his deck. And he has the weirdest of all of them, right? It's a single kick, right?
Yeah. Gotcha.
And no, excuse me. It's not. It's a double, but it has no concave.
Oh,
It's flat.
Flat. So a flat piece of fucking wood with a tail and a nose. Excuse me. Yeah, we do have a single kick though. And it's all shaped fucking like Hans Lundgren's board from the 80s. And I was like, then I was like everybody else. I was like, I don't know, man.
Maybe we should be popsicles.
That's a little fucking weird. And then, you know, and I'm like, can you ride that? And he's like, I'll show you, you know. And so we started there and with him. And to know Tony is to know in his prime, which I still think he is, but he was one of the best, if not the best. And he's very character in the scene, which means that people know who Tony Gale was, right? So I'm taking advice from the perfect person, right? And he's also crazy, you know, like me, right? So I'm like, dude, it's gonna be a team. He's like, team, you know? So everything I'm saying, he's like, yes, you know, and everything he's saying, I'm like, yes, you know? So I'm like, the Raiders, man, you know, fear, fucking God at a contest, like, let's hope to God Moonshine doesn't show up. He's like, I know exactly what you mean. I was like, and I want ladies. He's like, I'm like, do the girls freestyle? He's like, yes. I was like, who's the fucking best, right? Who are we gonna get? You know, and I said, it's gotta be the best. And I said, not amateurs right now, but I want the fucking best. Who's the best in the US? Who's the best in Japan? Who's the best in the UK? He's rattling off all these names. I'm like, who are the gods here? Who are the old dogs that people look up to? Toshiaki, Lillis. Guy's been at it since the 80s. And one by one, this time I did it right. I didn't do anything I didn't want to do. I let people on slowly. Me and Tony had like a jump you in mentality. Like, you had to ride fucking fast and gnarly, and you had to have an attitude to be on our team. Like, we ain't no fucking pussies. You can edit that out too. You know, nobody like that. No wishy-washy, nothing. Like, just gnar.
Yeah.
Okay? And I had already opened up the doors in the UK, so already we were going to be cross-continental. Team was already going to be USA and UK. And I was already made an inroad in Japan, and I had actually a rider in Australia. And the Japan thing we'll get into, but that's really kind of breaking the doors open too. But, you know, it was like, this is the best in the US. And this person is the most media savvy and incredible, and the attitude here is amazing. Watch the footwork. And he's telling me to watch all this stuff, and I'm like, Tony, man, I don't fucking know. It's like, I believe you when you talk, okay? So if it's good, it's good. But the deal is that we got every single fucking one of them. Every single one. I said, who is the fucking best? This guy, Toshiaki in Japan. This guy is the ruler. Let me handle it. Sent off a little fucking message to Toshiaki, got him, right? Happy to do it. Lewis, happy to fucking do it. Tony, Denham Hill, even Dan in the United States. Wasn't a whole lot of pickings in the United States, by the way. Just wasn't. That's the way it is, apparently. I don't know. But we got Dan because he was super fucking media, and he was super on top of it, and people liked him, you know. And he just one by one got Miri, got the Japan team moving in the right direction, and I'm making really crazy looking decks, and the graphics are coming together, and guess what? It's fucking selling, right? Unlike the Vert shit, which I felt like I was in a black hole.
Yeah,
like, I'm like, where the fuck are all you people? Like, you don't want a Ben Schroeder deck drawn by David Andrea, shaped like this? Like, cool. I would have fucking killed, I wouldn't even started Moonshine if that deck existed. I would have bought 10 of those, and that would have been it. I would have rode that till I was dead, you know? So there was a lot of ill feeling, leaning on regret at the early part of Moonshine, and I just didn't get it, man. And I would talk to my brother, who I knew got it, and he's like, fuck those people, man. They just don't know what you're doing. Whatever, or they do, and skateboarding is so fucking lame, they don't care. You got to let that go, and I couldn't. And so I think I was searching, right? You know, and I didn't want to do street because I don't know nothing about street. Other than I think I was the first person to do a flatland ollie in Florida. No, in Miami, because Rodney Mullen, obviously. But, you know, so I was always good at it in a weird way. But there was as much disappointment as could be on top of it. Even when Clay and Italo and everybody was on the team, and it was like, get out of my fucking way. Like, Clay's going to bury you, you know, anywhere he goes. Italo's going to bury you too. And if I could have got those other 3 guys on the team at the same time, I would have been unstoppable. But it still wouldn't have made me happy, because I would have had to make popsicle decks for them. They wouldn't have appreciated the shape. And I wasn't moving. I wasn't going anywhere, you know. And I could do the Conan deck, which you think would be a grand slam, right? It took me forever to sell 50 of those. It was ridiculous.
So interesting to me.
Yeah, it's like, and it can't be that you didn't know who I was. I had distribution with Eastern. I was in the UK. I was in Japan. I was in multi, everywhere you could think of. So it wasn't like I wasn't there. I was. So people don't give a shit. That's what I said. They don't care to think about skateboarding like you do. Like, you guys might, and I'm sure that there's other people that do, you know. But it's like, well, I kept telling myself, what more do I got to do? That's all I kept saying was, what more do I got to do, you know? And when I brought Matt Dove on the team, you know, he's incredible, right? Incredible, especially for his age, but that shouldn't have anything to do with it. He's just an amazing fucking skateboarder. So happy. Let him draw some graphics, let him do this, incredible. Didn't make a dent. And he knew it. He wasn't satisfied about it either, you know? It's just like everything I did, I thought, home run, should be a fucking home run. Get to the freestyle, right out of the fucking gate. Right out of the fucking gate. All over freestyle. Everybody's talking about it. Yeah. Boards are selling like fucking hotcakes. Selling out of fucking decks. People writing me, can I be on your team? Finally, first time ever, somebody's writing me, can I be on your team? You know, good skateboarders. Yeah, and I was like, fuck, I guess you got to get the joke. How does that
feel after years of iteration, of trying to, and you did?
That's why I went for it just flat out, and I just stopped. I you know, this is going to sound terrible, and I know everybody got a personal letter from me. Everybody knows why, but I dropped the entire Vert team. I did. I was like, it's not working. You know, I'm trying my best. You guys are great. You're fantastic. I brought Jake and Andre back recently because I missed them, and they're great, and they need to be on a team. But, you know, it's going nowhere. You know, popsicle boards suck. I'm not want to do it, you know, and it doesn't matter how good you guys are. It's never going to break through. Nobody gives a shit. I know who's going to win the top 5 in every contest, and it's nobody on my team anymore, right? So we're getting froze out. You guys are great, but we're not there, right? And with the freestyle team, it's like, beat us if you can, you know, like, let's see you try, you know. But it just all came together the way that I thought it would initially with the Vert team. So, you know, there was a point after the first 3 years right before the freestyle stuff came on board really well, is I was going to shut it down. I lost a lot of money, you know, not lost it, that's the wrong phrase, but I spent a lot of money, you know, my wife won't let me forget that either, but, you know, that's where my money went, you know, that's where it went. You know, I didn't buy guitars, I didn't buy any of this shit, I bought skateboards, and I had all my money wrapped up in Penswood all the time, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars all the time. Burned a few credit cards, all that kind of fun stuff, so, but, you know, there were glimpses with the Vert team. There were glimpses, there were moments, Wind and Vert Attack, and you know, all this great, that summer was great, or winter, whatever it was. And, you know, it made me feel like I could do it. But it's almost the same way with the music. It felt like that at times too. That more or less like, wasn't more like, well, what more do I need to do? But it was more like, why would I do more? Like, you know, like, why would I put any more effort into this if everybody else's label is such garbage and all music is getting worse and worse and worse? And then that's why when I did the second label, I stopped that myself. I just stopped. I was like, I'm going to pigeonhole myself, and sooner or later, you know, I'm going to look back on it and wish I hadn't put out those last 10, is what I told myself. Like, I put out some pretty good stuff. I was doing books. I was proud of myself. I was doing some pretty interesting shit. You know, books with CDs attached and hand stamped and hand put together. It was unique. Yeah.
What a nice zine.
Yeah, right. That was amazing.
We love
yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, they were great. And that was getting back to my old school first label stuff where I was messing with chipboard and hole punchers and string.
Tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so they were great, but they would also take me an hour to put one book together, right? You know? So when you're trying to work in a hospital, you don't want to come home and do that. So
for sure,
it was getting labor of love and a little bit also of that same thing is like some people on my label were really, 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 really good. Really good. And they were leagues above people that were getting noticed. Leagues above, in my opinion. And I was like, it's going to turn into, this was pre-Moonshine, but I was like, this is going to turn into a disappointing thing. You know what I mean? So maybe I chicken shit out and said, fuck it, I don't want to disappoint myself. You know what I mean? I'll go out on top. Let's just say that, yeah. So I think I did that last We All Inherit the Moon record on vinyl, and I was like, that's it, we're good. You know, I'll just quit here and I'll find something else to do. But I'm on my third, but it's more an idea. It's not physical yet, but I'm going to come back and do another one, I think. I don't know. I'm in so many bands now, I figure I got enough material to start my own label. I might as well fucking do it, you know? But again, you know, that's going back to what you said earlier is, you know, or what I was saying too, is like it has hooks in you. They're invisible. You don't know why you're doing it. You know, I still can't answer that question. I don't. You know, like this is not cheap. Like you have to think about this before you do it. Like it's a lot of money. And I don't have to think. I have to do it. You know, I have to. It's the way that it is, you know. I don't know. I mean, it's better that I don't have a lot of money. So, you know, but you know, if I have it, then this is what's gonna happen. There is gonna be a record label, there is gonna be a band, there is gonna be, you know, a skate company, there is gonna be that stuff. And so I wanna do it. And thankfully my interests are very connected and around those two things, because if I had a third, I wouldn't have any money at all, probably. Well, the Star Wars toys counted. Right. Yeah, they're sinking me a little bit too. So, yeah.
Have you ever been able to take the hook out? Like, do any of the ideas never come to fruition? Or?
I would tell you what, outside of my New York days when I was strictly stuck in the studio engineering and whatnot, I have gone a year where I won't touch a guitar. Yes, I have. But at that time, I'll be doing something else. Like I'll be doing Moonshine full time. And there are times when I don't want to talk about Moonshine for months, you know, and I want to do this. And the reason that sometimes I'm doing multi is I don't want to burn out. And I don't want to take the hook out, right? And I don't want to even look at it. I don't want to know it's there, you know? That's a really good question. I'm susceptible to burnout more than most people probably. So I do keep busy with that, switching around a lot. Yeah, I thought about it. I think I'd have a lot of money in the bank. That'd be one thing. But I wouldn't be very happy. You know, I mean, I don't know what else to do. So, you know, outside of my family and watching movies, this is all I do, you know. So, you know, and I'm happy to do it. It's fine by me. You know, I come up here and every night and play the synthesizer for an hour. I mean, I could soundtrack something, if, you know, I will, but I just do it for fun. It's meditative, it's nice, you know, same thing sometimes with the guitar. They're all very nice, but this is comfort food. This is just for here, but I mean, you know, I still play in an improvised, you know, Mission of Burma type trio here in Memphis as well with the guitar. So I still play the guitar all the time. Yeah, it's hard. Like I said, I've never been able to answer that question on even what the hook is and where it got into me. And other than what you guys did great at getting it out, is like, oh, I guess it started with the MTV. And, and I was talking to a good friend of mine, Bill, the other day. And, you're not quite aware when we're young what we're doing and how we're doing it and but when we're sitting there kind of parlaying along with that DIY ethos thing that was there, I'm not saying that it was any better or worse in the 90s, but it was a little bit more interesting to use a payphone to book a tour, right, than it is to go on the internet and do whatever. My brother had to write letters and sending cassettes. It's harder. But, the idea that if you want it done, you do it. And you got to get it done. Maybe it gets a little hazier and lost as the generations go on, so I get that. But that's like life shit. That's like one of the fucking things where you talk about a hook. That's life shit. Like, that's an attitude that you carry all over the fucking place. And all my friends from that era all have that attitude. There's nothing we can't do. If we want to do it, we'll do it. And we'll do it better. So that's to answer all those questions about why did I do moonshine or do this. That's why. I thought I could do it better, and I did. End of story. And if I didn't, I'd keep going at it probably. But yeah, you should ask everybody that question. By the way, if they even remotely say they have a hook in them, ask them if there's a time when they don't. I'd be curious to hear somebody's answer on that. I don't know. I feel restless too much.
We get dragged too. Yeah.
We get that answer a lot though. We get that a lot, that it's
I mean, we've gone broke over just this project probably 4 or 5 times. Right. It's like, why are we doing it?
But we continue to do it because we feel some semblance of worth in it, and I can't explain that.
It's insanity, man. That's all. It's just fucking crazy. Yeah. That's all. I think of everything I could have owned instead of moonshine, and it would have been a lot. Fucking Corvette. A house. I spent that much money. It's a lot to sink into an idea that's either good or bad. That I don't know if it's good. And again, you guys know this. You get frustrated, and you get self-doubt creeping in, and you don't want that. That's the end of it, man. That's why the bands break up. That's why the projects don't happen. It's like, I can't get it done, right? And then you can't let that win. That's the hook.
Does your brother maybe help maintain the hook? Like, I feel like the reason that we're able to continue this is because we love each other.
Absolutely.
No one else is into any of this shit except this guy.
My brother is like super content as long as he can practice every Friday with his friend Brent, and then play shows if he wants to, or go tour Japan like he did, and do what he wants to do. But he needs that Friday, right? Otherwise he'll go mad. He told me, and he'd go bonkers. And I'm like, get it. You got life licked, man. That's a simple task. Brent's your best friend. You live in the same fucking city. Go for it for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I'm fortunate here in Memphis. I've been here a couple years, but I fell in with Scott at Memphis Magnetic, and I've got a beautiful world-class recording studio to go to anytime I want to, right? So that's beautiful, right? So I get a chance to express myself in a world-class environment, and that's keeping me going too. So, yeah. No, you guys should really, again, ask that of everybody. I'd be curious to hear if there's a hook. Because, one of the things about Indian Summer that people don't get too, there's 2 things at play here. One is that me and my brother, Ed and Mark to an extent, but definitely me and my brother, we are real people. Real fucking people. We weren't going to college and meeting people and starting our little college band. We weren't doing that. This is 2 real broke motherfuckers living in downtown Oakland or wherever we were living, in the middle of the hood, trying to play a band. My brother's, you're a great guitar player. Why don't we sound like Husker Du and blah, blah, blah. And, my brother came home from Amoeba after like a 6-mile hike with the Slint record for the first time. Listen to this fucking thing, It's like, so we're blowing each other's minds, and we're trying to survive all the suffering and all the poverty and all the shit, and be creative and be artistic, right? So we've got more energy about doing it right. There's more of a victory for us and a better feeling if we get it right? That catharsis issue we're talking about. If we can express this shit and get it out of us and get it away from us, we'll feel better. So we were real you know, and we weren't, you know, again, what we were encountering was like college kids in my college band. Yeah, this is why the bands came and went, I think. People graduated. I don't even know, you know. And, you know, you don't know it back then, but me and my brother were lifers. You know, we didn't know that. I didn't know. It's like, I don't see myself at my age right now playing music still, but yeah, I'm a lifer, you know. Well, why that is the real question, you know. But yeah, it's always played an important role for whatever reason, you know, in my life, and it needs to be there. And that part I've figured out, and I'm okay with that, right? But I never understood, me and my brother were talking about this to answer that question, is I never understood people that played music or skated for like a year or two. Like, does that make you a poser? Like, isn't that what that is, right?
You treat it like a fad. Yeah, and jump on when it's cool, jump off.
You had a little moment there. Great for you, you know what I mean? But you're not a real fucking skateboarder. A real skateboarder steps on a skateboard, that's it. That's for life until your knees give out. And even then, you'll still try, right? Maybe even with a real musician, if you feel like, hey, I got any kind of feedback that was positive from anything that I ever produced, I'll probably do it again. Even if it was one person, you know, the sound of one hand clapping at Gilman, I'll still do it, you know what I mean? And, you know, it's probably ego driven too for a lot of people, but maybe my ego is bigger than theirs, you know? But I didn't, to answer that question again, I never understood anybody coming and going from any of these things. That never made sense to me. Never.
I have one more, and this one's maybe just super personal, but so being a four-lifer, like I've struggled just in my graduate program of like, oh, I'm like, none of these people I'm surrounding myself with are four-lifers about anything except, or like this, like, I don't even know, the superficial, like we need to study medicine and that's what I don't, and medicine is beautiful, it's such an art, but how did you manage being a four-lifer skater, four-lifer musician,
while still
all while like going like
functioning in life?
Exactly, like actually like okay, yeah, you and to do like the most successful one, the one that's like, you know, med school is very it's pretty prolific.
Yeah, so you know, I didn't go back to college, if this is part of the question, till I was in my 30s. So I'm a high school dropout, right? My brother graduated, I think. Yeah, he did, but I dropped out. So we went back at 34. Why did we go back? We were so poor that the government said they'd give us X amount of dollars to go to school for free. And I said, how much? And so we were surfing at the time, right? So that's part of it, skating and surfing, right? Making music. So my brother and I's trajectory either goes, we moved somewhere for either skateboarding or music, mostly music in the 90s. And eventually maybe it was surfing and skateboarding and whatever. So if we move back to San Diego, or we go to San Diego, we're going there for surf and we're going there for skating, right? So we moved to Hawaii on their money, on the man's money. And we lived not well. We lived, you know. We lived walking, bike riding to the beach so we could surf every day if we wanted to. And spent 2 years in Hawaii, right? On the man's dime, right? Borrowing their money, taking their money just to go to school. I'm like, you got it. I'll do this till something better comes along. And then we moved from there to San Diego to continue to skate and surf. So that's the heart of the industry right there. So that's starting to plant the seed right then and there. Like, I'm starting to see these people run into Neil Blender at the place and talk, and run into these guys that run these companies, and I'm talking to them. So you get that, but it all has to be part of that. It all has to make sense. Like, there's no putting that aside. And I will tell you, I wrote the best shit. I wrote the greatest We All Inherit the Moon shit my first couple years of school, when I was immersed in my studies. Those albums came out. That was great. It was great. So it was very, helped me get through the school, I would say. Yeah. So I never put all my eggs in that school basket. Like, that's just, you know, and then it buys this shit, you know? So instead of wanting that, I actually get it, you know? That's all. I don't know. You know, the world is, there was a time when you could be washing dishes and skate and surf and be in a band. And that ship has sailed.
Past.
Yeah. I need to do this just to stay afloat, to be honest with you. You do too.
Same with me.
Right. This is why we do it, right? You know.
Gave up. Yeah. We forfeited a lot of making music to figure out how we will survive. And mine was like going to Alaska and being part of this hot shot program on a military base to fight wildfires. And I got injured there, and it's been this constant teeter of surviving in the modern world, but also making like
I just
whatever's
find
in here.
It's hard to manage both because I don't know. Like all I really care about is doing the dreams, but it feels like the majority of my time I'm spending doing the other thing.
That's all right. That's all right. And you know what? Don't beat yourself up about it. That's all. I learned that. Just like, this week is going to be school. That's what I would tell myself. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm not going to be happy about it, but this is what it is. You know, you don't got the motivation. You don't got the time to play the guitar. Don't do it. You know what I mean? Don't force it. You'll end up hating it. And it was a compromise, but we all three agree. I mean, I don't see how anybody does it anymore, man. And there was a point last year where I had 2 jobs. I'm like, fuck it. It's that bad out there. You know, it's like, okay. So that's a big conversation too about why people don't get into their own record labels and they don't get into their own skateboard companies, right? Because you have to have a real job to do that. Like Moonshine took a lot of fucking money initially for me to come up with and some credit cards too, but a lot. And that's past labor of love. That's not labor of love anymore. That's like, like I said, I could have bought a house. You know what I mean? I could have bought a lot of shit with that. I guess you got to be, like the 3 of us, you got to have a screw loose, man, just to even attempt that kind of shit, So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You'll get there and it'll be fun. And there's a piece of me that wishes I had done it earlier because it would have been nice to be young with money instead of where I'm at now. But it's still just as fun. But yeah, it's a good question. I hope kids, some of my clients are on the younger side. And I'm always asking them that kind of shit. I'm like, what are you going to be? They're like, oh, biophysicist or something. I'm like, that's great. You know how much money you're going to have when you're 25 years old? Like, it's going to be incredible.
Well, it's going to take them till about 29 or 30.
Yeah, now, who knows? But they're so get-go-y that they're all going to be in competition with each other, too.
Yeah.
So good luck, what I mean? Yeah. My generation's not get-go-y as far as college was. Like, nobody really did that.
Because you could wash dishes and do the skate shit.
Absolutely.
You could either, or maybe I'm just cynical.
I mean, when we lived in poverty, when we had the Blue House at Indian Summer, that was a... that was a choice.
House.
Yeah. That was a choice. So we were above a liquor store and it was painted blue, so we called it.
Gotcha.
That was a studio apartment that I slept in the kitchen and the record label was run out of the pantry. And my brother had what we called the big room, which was the only room. And Mark had the middle section of this thing patroned off to be his room, right? So there was no real room there. And at some point I had lived there with another roommate previous to us all living together, and we all came back to that house. But I mean, it was, I want to say $190 a month. I know it sounds incredible. It was in Emeryville. It wasn't in the greatest neighborhood of all time, so let's just be honest about that, right? But it's at that point you've also made that decision. I'm going to live like this. I'm going to live here. I could be shot here, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. I never felt that way, but I'm sure other people did. And communal living, which I don't know the kids do that anymore, or they should, but that's how we got by. When we were at the tail end, when I went on tour, we were in a Victorian with 9 other roommates. That's how you go on tour. You still have to save your rent money, but you're not paying the full $1,200 a month there. You're paying $200 of that, right? So that's not that hard. I mean, it's hard, but it's not that hard. So it was doable. That's the key point, is it is doable, and you want to know that you at least remotely have a financial chance of achieving your goals and dreams if you want them, right? So I don't know, going back and washing dishes if I would have been able to start Moonshine or doing whatever. There's also, a life choice there, an element of which was part of why I chose the career I did.
The Moonshine needed this other thing to
it did.
begin.
It needed the paychecks.
Pretty synergy in getting the job and doing what you
I can
love.
tell you, my second year out, I started Moonshine. My second year in, I had a really great year with the money, and I was like, I'm either gonna, this is either gonna become a Corvette or a lot of wine or some fine food, or it can become Moonshine. Which I still try to tell my wife, and I don't think she understands, but that's the truth. Is I'm not great with money, as far as that goes, so it's like, it's gonna go somewhere, right? And
I just think that's typically where I think everyone has a hook to some extent, but you lose it because you have to sacrifice it. It's just hard to even remember direction that were originally pulled in,
I
don't
really
know.
relate though to, because I got the Wildland job and I work
Yeah,
all
yeah.
summer all around the world and I have no free time
Yeah.
but that allows me to
Yeah.
do
I mean,
anything
we have spent
else
every
I
single dollar on this silly little thing that
traveling around and trying to preserve and archive
Yep.
something we feel
I
is
would just
worth
go with the madness of it all. It's like, you don't even know. It just, who cares? You're just doing it because you're doing it. Because you have to. That's what I tell you. You have to. I don't know. You know, whatever, man. Somebody has to.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's like I said, if somebody had done moonshine before me, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have. I'm just always searching for whatever's not there somehow. And it just happens to be what I love the most, just isn't there at times, you know. I want MTV to come back. Like if I was a billionaire, I'd bring MTV back. You know, I would. I'd put the Old Bones Brigade and the old original GNS team together and you know, Chris Miller and Lance Mountain on the same team, you
Lance
know, I'd just
Mountain's
fucking
the
do
man.
it, you know, yeah. I'd pay them a lot of money and we'd have a great team. Yeah, but nobody wants to do that, right?
So to try and sum all this up, from, you know, building your ramp to Jabberjaw to Indian Summer to Moonshine and everything else in between, like, what do you think it's taught you that you can still apply, like, to your life now that wasn't there prior when you were 10? You know, that you didn't have, and now on the other side you do have.
Yeah. You know, right as you're saying, the first word that came into my mind, because I have to challenge some of my clients with this question sometimes, and it's something you have to think about as you get older, it would be, the word that popped in was purpose. Strangely enough, purpose, right? You know, maybe that's what I'm here to do, you know, possibly, right? You know, I tell you what I told somebody in all honest truth, and I think I was a little trash when I said it, but one of the things I did with Moonshine was thank skateboarding, give it back. And I thought that's the least I could do. For something that changed my life like that, fundamentally changed my life. Probably somewhere in the recesses of my brain think that about music as well. It's like I might be giving something a little bit back. You know, I'm a little more humbled than I should be. Excuse me, I'm not as humbled as I should be, but I should be that anybody even bothers listening to anything I ever did. That should be very, very humbling. It's a large field of music out there. You've got a lot of shit to choose from. And if you choose that record that I did, or, you know, that my brother did, or whoever my friends do, it says a lot. You should be very humbled by that. It's very, puts you in your place kind of thing, you know? And so, like I said, the first word was purpose, but I would need to think about that truly. But, you know, I wasn't aimless. I'm not gonna say I was aimless, but I'm gonna tell you I knew exactly what I was gonna do for the rest of my life when I was 12. How many people can say that? You know, it's the first time you roll down the street on that real board, you're like, done and done, you know, done until the knees stop working, you know. I think, you know, it took me a minute, but I remember getting my first real amp and my first real guitar and hitting those first couple chords with that amp. And I do remember this fondly. And I remember feeling like, you know, like I got hit by lightning, you know, and that's the hook, you know, that's like bad drugs. You're like, oh, now I'm not going to live any other way, right? Now I need to make that chord happen again and again and again and again and again. And, you know, I still have a Marshall, and the only reason I own it is because I'm literally like a crackhead addicted to that chord on a Marshall. Like I need to hear that actual only tone that a Marshall can deliver. I'm seriously fucking addicted to that, you know. So I keep it around for that. But you know, but I don't want to say purpose in that weird way, like some people think, you know, whatever their purpose is. But I know a lot of people can't answer the question, what's your purpose? And I do not, if you were to ask me to my face, believe my purpose that I was put here is to skateboard and to do this spot. I do that for fun. So I would be just as lost as anybody else to answer that question. But again, that's interesting because that was the word that popped in, right? I mean, I definitely, as a younger kid, not only purpose, but ambition, you know, drive to do something. Hey, the law says I got to graduate high school, but the day of that diploma, me and my brother are going to California. We're gone, and we're going to go skate professionally, and we're going to go be in a band, and we're going to go do all these things. And we did all of them, except for the pro part. That's terrible, but we sucked. But I mean, you know, who knows? We were okay at one point, but the skateboarding got too good. But yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, how many people at 12 have I don't want to call it a life plan, but
revelatory experience.
Or an experience like that. Yeah. Like, I can't do enough of this. Like, I'm doing this 5-6 hours a day because my body physically, I'm too skinny. My body won't go 8. You know, I'm not Rodney Mullen, right? But, you know, and my mom loved it, you know, because we were out. We weren't sitting around the house all day. You know, we were doing something. And it was like, how much of it are we going to do and with who? That was the only question. Right? Is it going to be 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 4 hours a day? You know, you wake up and like, when are we going to go skate? Who are we doing it with? You know, and then with the music, this is going to get a little deep, but you guys will forgive me. But with the music, even though we always practiced, right? Even with Jabberjaw, it was like once or twice a week, and because I like to play. I didn't call it practice. I wanted to be with my friends and play. You know, so if that was what the excuse that I needed, I would call it practice for sure. But the reason I went to free jazz eventually, my brother did too, is I also feel like practicing songs and then playing them in front of people is just the definition of death. Like, it's so fucking ridiculous why anybody would do that repeatedly over and over again, but whatever. But so we would practice, but you know, that's not it wasn't as driven like it was with skateboarding, where it's like, I'm going to skate, I'm going to turn pro, this is the lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to practice to get this good, and this is what's going to happen. Those bands are all very organic with me, very organic with my brother, which means that we don't practice. Like, even to this day, my brother doesn't practice the drum, right? I don't practice this. I do this if I want to do this. I don't practice anything. We let, and perhaps this answers another question about it in summer too, we let life build us and build our character, toughen us up a little bit, make us a little ugly, sure, make us a little drunk, sure, you know, make us a little hard to get along with each other at times, sure. But that's what we practiced. We practiced living. We practiced staying alive. We practiced like understanding where we were going to be in this world. Like, is it fair that I have to wash dishes, you know, and live on $3 a fucking week? No, it's not. How does that make me feel? Let me bring that to the base. You know, that's where you get that Indian summer. There's a realism of that generalized, like what they said, I said it 3 times already in this interview, but that omnipresent anger burst, you know, and you said, is it cathartic or whatever, all that yelling and screaming. I'm sure that it was, to be honest with you. Sure. I don't want to psychoanalyze myself, but I'm sure, you know, there's pain. Everybody's got pain. And we weren't lying about it. And again, I was using it, you know, and there's, you know, nobody knows this because you won't get it from the lyrics. You will, you won't, but there's a love song or two in there. There is. Like, I was in love like everybody else, you know, I'm not stupid, you know, so that's in there. And, you know, that's where I think their energy came from. And I think when we were on stage, you could see it, that there was genuine expression. And maybe that's probably what's missing from a lot of kids nowadays, is they're in a band to be in a band, they're in a band to try to make money, they're in a band to do this, they're in a band to do that. Again, getting back to that hook, we're in a band because we don't know anything else to do. We don't know any other way to do this other than this is how it's got to happen. And we were letting life damage us, create us, make us exhilarated, and we were sharing all that damage and exhilaration at the same time, you know? And that's the difference between practicing a song and playing a song, and being in a band or being in a fucking band, you know? And our bands were gangs. We were wolf packs. Like, we one of us hurt, we all hurt. One of us fucked up, we all got fucked up, you know? It was a thing, you know, and you know, that's why they break up too. It's too much. You know, we're all married to the same object, you know, and we're all competing for the general love of the one thing, the band, and everybody has a different version of that too. So, and I think that's the reason a lot of bands break up too, is just people who've never been in a band may not understand that, but it is a marriage, and it's 4 or 5 guys married to one woman, you know, or whatever, you know, one band, but it's everybody wants what they want from it, and if they don't get it, they blame you or whatever, you know what I mean? And we all do it psychologically with each other, but